sent it to her.
Yesterday?
Yeah, I sent it. I sent it to the clerks too.
Changed it around here. It's all getting fixed.
Councillors to chamber for quorum, please. Oh, there's Stephen. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I see we have quorum. I'll call this meeting to order. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I will now take a motion to confirm the minutes from May 22, 2019. Moved by Deputy Mayor Holliday. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any petitions at the time? Seeing none, we'll now go through the items. (17.1) Final report, 1 Blue Goose Street zoning bylaw amendment application. We have speakers at 10. 7.2 Final report, 170 the West Mall zoning bylaw amendment application. Speakers at 10. 7.3 Final report, 50 York Gate Boulevard, 25 Norfinch Drive, and 2050 Finch Avenue West Deeming bylaw. Councillor Prutz is not here. I'll just hold that down. As far as I know. 7.4 a refusal report, 12, 16, and 20 Cordova Avenue official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Holly, can you move that on my behalf, please?
Certainly. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.5 request for direction report, 555 the West Mall zoning bylaw amendment application. We're going to hold that for speakers. 7.6 final report, 2217 the Queensway application to lift the holding provision H. That's in my ward. Councillor Ford, do you mind moving that for me?
Yes, sir. So moved.
Councillor Ford moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.7 final report, 289 291 the Kingsway and 1357 St. Stephen's Court part law control exemption application. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations contained in the report.
Deputy Mayor Holliday is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.8 preliminary report, 2667 2677 Kipling Avenue zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.9 preliminary report, 250 Wincott Drive and 4620 Eglinton Avenue West zoning bylaw amendment application. We're going to hold that for speakers. 7.10 alterations to the heritage property intention to designate under Part 1V, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Number 1, the Blue Goose. We have speakers at 10:15. 7.11 alterations to 2 designated heritage properties, 69 Long Branch Avenue and 25 Marine Avenue. We have speakers at 10:15. 7.12 application to remove a private tree, 22 Boxwood Road. We have speakers at 9:45. 7.13 application for fence exemption, 64 Courtsfield Crescent. We have speakers at 9:45. 7.14 assumption of services, registered plan 66M-2526, 735 and 743 Renforth Drive, and 735 Renforth Developments, Inc. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations contained in the report.
Councillor Holiday moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.15 Boulevard Cafe application. Business owner changed 3311, 3313 Bloor Street West. Councillor Ford, you move the staff recs for me, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.16 Highway alterations, Highway 27 and Queens Plate Drive. Councillor Ford.
Mr. Chair, I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.17 road alterations on John Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.18 traffic control signals, the East Mall and Capri Road. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations contained in the report.
Councillor Holiday moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.19 all-way stop control, Mary Chapman Boulevard and Menship Road. Councillor Perruzza. Good afternoon. 7.19. All-way stop. Councillor Perruzza is moving the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Perruzza, held 7.3 final report, 50 Yorkgate Boulevard, 25 Norfinch Drive in 2050. Okay, so on 7.3, final report, 50 Yorkgate Boulevard, 25 Norfinch Drive and 2050 Finch Avenue West. Deeming bylaw, you can move that to next day?
October, not September.
Okay. We're good? So deferring till October's meeting, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.20 turn prohibitions, Church Street and George Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Move staff recommendations.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.21 turn prohibition, Fern Avenue and George Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Move staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.22 turn prohibition, 1345 Martin Grove Road. Councillor Ford.
Mr. Chair, I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.23 turn prohibition removals, the Pond Road, James Gillies Street, and York University Busway. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.24 lane designation, Trethewey Drive at Jane Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Move staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.25 reopening of the public walkway between Acme Crescent and 1735 Kipling Avenue. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I hold that item?
Hold that
Motion
down.
in the works.
Okay. 7.26 traffic calming on George Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I do have a motion. Okay, I'd like to move that.
What's it? Can you just maybe briefly tell us what you're doing? Councillor Nunziata?
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, but can you just tell us what it is? It's kind of hard to see from where it is.
Oh, to direct, we did have a public meeting on this, city staff are quite aware of this. We have two schools on George Street, Catholic and a public board, so I'm directing transportation service to reduce the speed from 40 to 30 and waive the polling requirement under the city's traffic calming policy and approve the installation of traffic calming on George between King and Church and request the city solicitor to prepare bylaw.
Okay, so Councillor Nunn just striking out the staff recommendations and moving what's on the screen. Recorded votes requested. All in favor. Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Ford, Councillor Grimes, Councillor Perruzza. In opposition, Councillor Holiday. That carries. 7.27 parking machine, Bloor Street West between Montgomery Road and Brentwood Road North. I have a technical amendment. I'd like to add a number 3, that City Council rescind the existing parking prohibition in effect at all times on the north side of Bloor Street West between Montgomery Road and Brentwood Road North. So I'm adding a number 3. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.28, parking regulation amendment, Isaac Devens Boulevard. Councillor Perruzza.
Just a quick question on this to the staff.
Hold it down?
Gina,
I gotta hold it down.
we don't need to hold
Yeah, we can hold it down, yeah. 7.29, parking regulation amendments, Humberville Boulevard and Glenville Boulevard South. Councillor Ford, move the staff recs, please.
Mr. Chair, I move staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.30, parking regulation amendment, Ormont Drive. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Perruzza, move the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.31, parking regulation amendment, West Dean Park Drive near Joseph Cardinal Sleepy School. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations and give a special thank you to staff for ensuring that this got before us in time so that we can make the changes by next school year.
Councillor Holiday moves the staff recs with thanks to staff. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.32, request to study speed limit on the Queensway. That's in my word. Councillor Ford.
Mr. Chair, I move staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.33, appointments to business improvement area boards of management. Councillor Ford, you wish to hold that down?
Right.
Oh, we have speakers?
And, Mr. Chair, I have a request to go in camera at the appropriate time.
Okay, so we'll hear from the speaker, then we'll go on camera. Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
So on 7.33, we're going to go into camera. We'll hear from the speaker first, and then we'll go on camera. 7.34, request to resign traffic island at Evans Avenue East Mall. I'm going to hold that down in my name. Oh, I need a motion to add that as new business. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I'm going to hold that down. Councillor Perruzza, point of order?
Yeah, not a point of order, I'd just like to add this to the agenda as well. It has to do with speed bumps on,
What's a point of what?
on this
Point of order.
point of adding it to the agenda.
What's a point of order?
Point of order, okay, sure, point of order.
Okay, so could you,
I was just about to give it to the clerk.
okay, give it to the clerk. We'll have that circulated, and we'll come back and reintroduce it once we see what it is. And Councillor Holiday also has one, so please give it to the clerk. We'll have it circulated. We'll add those to, 7.35, encroachment appeal, 70 Haverson Boulevard. Councillor Nunziata.
Well, to introduce it, but I'm waiting for a report from staff, so I'll have to hold it.
Okay.
I don't have the recommendation.
Okay, we'll hold that down. Yeah, it's introduced. It's just not debatable at this point. Where's my sheet?
This is all yours?
I think so. They didn't tell me.
Okay, we're going to start with 7.12, application to remove a private tree, 22 Boxwood Road. We have a couple of speakers. Mr. Kumpa, Kurt Kumpa. Morning, sir, welcome. So our clocks aren't working this morning, so I'll be timing from here, but you have 5 minutes, sir. If you just, yep. Brad? Yeah, okay. Okay. Floor is yours, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, councillors. My name is Kurt Kampa. My wife and I are co-owners of the house at 22 Boxwood Road, and we've lived there for 35 years, of course, during which time the tree has gotten much bigger than it was when we moved in. During that time, we have had one ash tree removed due to the emerald ash borer, and we have subsequently planted one tree. Our home currently has a canopy of about 60%, which you can see from the Google Maps on the first handout that I provided. The backyard is covered by 100% canopy, where the maple tree is actually located. The tree in question has imposed increased risks for our home. Oh, sorry. I guess I'm too tall. The tree in question has imposed increased risks for our property. The enjoyment and use of our backyard has also been compromised. There are several reasons why we are requesting approval to remove this tree. First, let me say that we did not include all of the reasons when we filed the tree application form originally. We had no idea that the process to remove a tree was so onerous and restrictive in nature, and we didn't really research the tree bylaw beforehand, unfortunately. So our primary reasons for removal are, number one, as you can see from the photos, I think photo 3 and 4, the tree is approximately 6 feet from our home. We worry about the risk of foundation damage and hanging limbs over our sitting area on our patio. Foundation damage from tree roots would not be covered by our home insurance plan. Even if we realize that this is a low risk, it is one that is still is of concern to us. Number 2 is the location of the tree. Not only is it 6 feet from the back of our house, it is also in the middle of our patio in a prime spot for our patio. We can't even have an awning or an overhang over the table because of the location of the tree. This means that our patio use is severely restricted, and also because of the footpath going around the tree, reducing the usable space quite a bit. We also require a cutout for the tree of about 6 feet by 5 inches so that it doesn't damage the deck. As a homeowner, obviously I'm aware that routine eavesdrop maintenance is a common responsibility of the property owner. But this tree has required excessive eavesdrop maintenance to make sure that the downspouts do not become plugged. We have incurred 2 indoor house floods in the last 8 years. Both of them have been due to plugged eavesdrops, and the water subsequently runs down the side of the house and into the window wells leading to the basement. Both times the eavesdrops were cleaned prior to the rainstorm. Unfortunately, our house lies low in the ground, and our 2 adjoining neighboring properties are higher. The house only has an eavesdrop on the back of the house and part of the front of the house, so it leaves us with very few options as what to do.
You started early.
We have tried 3 different types of eavesdrop covers to no avail. Either they're too coarse or they're too fine, the water runs off them, or if they're too coarse, the fine material from the trees just goes right through. Keep in mind that our maple trees are almost continuously dropping debris and whirlybirds in addition to the leaves in the fall. Approximately 40% of the maple tree extends over our home. Extensive pruning would be required in order to reduce the debris in the eavesdrop and reduce the risk of plugging the downspout. And there's also an extreme lack of sun inside our home for half a year due to these trees. So thank you again for your attention and your time.
Thank you, sir. You have a question by your counselor. Counselor Holiday, question?
Thank you for speaking to us. I wondered if you could, just for the benefit of my colleagues and the folks in the room, there's a great picture that you circulated with you touching the house and the tree at the same time. I think
He's a tall guy, he's got a long wingspan. Remember he said so.
I think that's the most important and very telling. So how long have you lived in the house?
We lived in the house for over 35 years at this point.
35 years, and what was that tree like a long time ago?
Well, the tree was obviously about a quarter of the size, so you could almost put your hands around it.
And do you dislike trees? Do you have any more on your property? Or?
No, obviously we like trees. You know, this is a part of Markland Woods, so obviously it's a community that specifically preserved trees when the area was developed. So, and that was one of the main reasons we moved into the area, because we do like trees.
Do you think that this tree may have been ill-advised in where it was planted, so close to the house? So it looks like I think it's 1.8 meters, I think the report said, but it's about 6 feet away from your house.
As I said before, the Markland Woods, when the houses were developed in that community, the trees were not disturbed when the developer developed the land. It's not like, you know, housing developments now where all the trees are bulldozed. So this developer actually built the homes in between the existing trees. So this tree was there. It's not like anybody planted it. It was part of that forest at the time. So
You have other trees on the property?
yes. So you can see from the picture, we have 2 large maple trees in our backyard, which provide 100% canopy in our backyard, and we have 2 birch tree clumps in the front yard. So altogether, we have at least a 60% tree canopy in our property.
And I know that the report suggests that if the tree is removed, you've got to replace some trees to make up for the loss of the urban forest. Do you have any objection to planting a tree on your property?
No, we do not have an objection to planting a tree to replace this tree.
Okay. And I guess finally, I remember reading somewhere that you have a deck built around the tree. And the tree seems to have grown an enormous amount. Just outside your door, is it lifting the deck? And
Yes, the tree as it grows, because first of all, I'd like to point out that we purposely chose to build a wood deck, or, you know, to help sustain the tree. Obviously, we realized if we put a hard surface there, it would absolutely have killed this tree. So we purposely built a wood deck with gaps in between the wood planks to allow water to go through, but the tree, as it grows, it lifts up these boards, so it means that we're constantly redoing or renovating the deck and increasing the size of the cutout.
I guess the last question, is it fair to say that you're sad to see, or you regret to see that the tree, you'd like to see it go? You regret that, but at some point, it's out of necessity that this thing has grown so large and so close to the house and right in the center of the deck that you've kind of run out of choices.
Yes, certainly. Obviously, you know, we've enjoyed this tree for so long. It's just a matter of really, you know, we're getting older. I'm a senior now. Looking after the property and looking after the eavesdrop in particular is becoming, you know, a semi-hazardous condition for me. And it's not something that, you know, we want to do really, but it's something that we need to do if we want to remain in the home. It's almost as if, you know, the tree has more rights than we do as people who want to stay in our home as we get older.
Excellent. Thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
Second speaker, Ms. Cooper, are you speaking also? Good morning, welcome. You have to pull that mic down now. There you go. Thank you. Welcome, good morning. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
So I just want to mention that in regards to eavesdrop, my husband is cleaning it every 2 weeks. So that's when we talk about excessive cleaning. And every time there's a thunderstorm, he cleans it. That's how much we are worried about it due to the floods that we had before. But what I want to say, so our current tree canopy is, we believe, triple what the average Toronto residential city lot has. We are proud to maintain these trees for so long. By looking after these trees, we feel we did not choose to remove any of the trees that we had 35 years ago. And we felt we were contributing to the overall good of the environment. But as my husband said, we're seniors now. Our financial income is fixed. We feel the risks are too great to have this tree remain. Our enjoyment of our property is diminished as this tree has grown. And we feel, in fact, that the tree now is not an asset, but a liability, and it devalues our home, being in the deck, and also and it doesn't enhance our property. So I understand the request would be to have 5 replacement trees for the one tree that we would remove. That would be at a cost to us of $2,915. And that's what's being asked of us to compensate for the removal of this tree. We're willing to pay this. Even though we're not rich people, but that's how important it is to us. We support the tree bylaw, and we agree that trees enrich our lives, our community, our society, but we feel that it should not be to our disadvantage as homeowners. Thank you.
You have a question by Councillor Hawley?
Thank you again for speaking to us. I just wanted to go over one point there. Did you calculate, I guess it's 5 trees, so the value of replacement value that the bylaw asks you is $2,915?
Yes.
And so I guess I just want to confirm your statement that you feel so strongly about the need to remove the tree that you're willing to pay those funds, even though that has absolutely nothing to do with the cost of the removal of the tree. Like, you've got to pay an arborist to take the tree down as well.
Yes, that's
So
true.
that's kind of a disbursement paid or a fee paid to the city.
Yes.
I wondered, do you have any concerns from your neighbors? Because, you know, one of the things we hear at community council is that, you know, trees, although they're on someone's property, people in the community see them, there's an impact to them. Any objections or concerns raised by people that live near you, or do other people understand?
We submitted 5 signatures from some of our neighbors. I have 2 more additional signatures and from our immediate neighbors, and verbal support to me, but I did not bring immediate neighbors on both sides fully support and understand what we're talking about and has seen the tree.
Okay, and I guess the one last thing, without us going to your yard, would you say that this tree has an enormous impact on shade on the back of your property? And
Absolutely.
you have some desire to have some sunlight come in?
Very much.
Okay. And I guess if I've got it right, that tree is immediately outside of the door leading out to your deck. So you walk out and there's this tree like one of those columns standing right in front of you, 6 feet in front of the wall.
Yes, just a little bit to one side. So we come out and it's right there. So perhaps if we were standing right at our sliding door exit point, it would be 8 feet right there.
If you could move the tree, would you keep it? Like move it to the corner of the yard?
Well, there is only one place that we can put a tree remaining in our property according to arborists. That would be if you were talking about this particular tree and moving it somewhere, that would require us moving it to the one location left, which would be 5 feet from the back of our neighbors and 5 feet from my side neighbors. I would actually say yes, but I would be concerned about my neighbors, that they would not be happy to see this for themselves, because it would overhang absolutely their properties.
And you don't have any plans to remove any of the other trees? I mean,
Oh, no.
This is just the one that's created an issue for you?
Yes, no, we love the trees. We want some shade. It's just now it's over the top.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the item before we bring it to committee? No further speakers? Questions of staff? Councillor Hawley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion I'd like to place. It's an alternate motion. And now that it's up, the motion is to grant the removal request of the tree. I had an opportunity to meet the homeowners and talk in detail about some of the impacts of this tree. And like sometimes we see at community council, somebody plants a tree 35, 40, 50 years ago with great intentions, well before the time we had a bylaw, and the trees grow and they grow and they grow and they grow until they come to a point where we realize maybe it just wasn't put in the right place, or it's too close to the house, or it's created an issue. I'm thoroughly convinced that these property owners are approaching us with the most noble of intentions here. They're not trying to deforest their yard. The district of the city is Markland Wood. They call it Markland Wood for a good reason. There's a lot of trees there, and they're considered features of the neighborhood, and they're valued. But from what I know of the people of Markland Wood, and including these property owners, they're not being unreasonable. There is sometimes change needed on lots. They clearly want to replace the tree and plant a new one, and I think they are frustrated with the bylaw that doesn't allow them to maintain their property or do what they need to do with the tree. And so I think the best thing we can do for them is allow them to remove this tree and be considerate of all the things that they've had to go through to get to this point, the cost that they're going to have to incur, and take into consideration that I believe them when they say that they're going to replace the tree on their property and that they're going to pay or replace 5 in total. And I think we just need to be reasonable with citizens when it comes to our bylaws. And in this case, you can see that picture of that tree just, an arm span off of the back wall and sitting in the middle of their deck. The irony in all of this is if they wanted to build a solarium or some other small structure at the back of their house, provided it was either in line with or allowed by the Committee of Adjustment, we wouldn't even have the discussion. The tree would be permitted to be removed. But in this case, our bylaw really locks this down, and they have no choice but to come to Community Council. So I hope my colleagues will give consideration to supporting their request. We don't see them very often, and often when we do see them, though, they are very reasonable in nature, as in this particular circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawley. Councillor Nunziata to speak.
Yes, I just want to speak briefly. I will be supporting Councillor Holliday's motion, but I don't think I've ever seen a report come forward when Max has said yes. So unfortunately, what happens, and just to let you know, the residents, is that we could approve removal of your tree here at Community Council. But when it goes to Toronto Council, it's, we have councillors that don't support and they hold the item down, and there's always a battle and a debate downtown at Toronto Council. So I just want to give you that update, and so hopefully we'll pass at Toronto Council, but we haven't been very successful when it comes to removing trees downtown.
Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, Councillor Holiday's motion is on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next item, 7.13, application for fence exemption, 64 Courtsfield Crescent. Are there any speakers on Courtsfield Crescent? Courtsfield Crescent, 64 Courtsfield Crescent. Seeing no speakers, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is it's a bit of an unusual file. There's been a request to put in a really tall fence between two properties. Short of the application form, I really don't know much more about the circumstances. Other than when I went there on the weekend, just to have a look, I found out that the adjacent property that is affected by the fence, so the fence, not the property that's applied for the fence, the other one is a house under construction. It's chained off with fences and other things. In this circumstance, there are so many questions, it's hard to understand all the details that we need to have as a community council to make a decision on the matter. So my advice is to defer this to next day. If we can get some more information on it, great. If we don't get any information, then we may need to refuse the application just because we just cannot make sense of or understand all of the details that we need to have in order to make this choice.
Okay, Councillor Holiday's moving deferral to next day. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Holiday, point of order.
Yes, Mr. Chair, on a point of order. Given that there's a very large speaker list and a very small speaker list for another item, I wondered if council would agree to amend our order so that we would hear 7.9 before 7.5, just to keep things efficient in the chamber.
Okay, so Councillor Holiday's moving, we deal with 9 before 5. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. 7.1, final report, number 1 Blue Goose Street zoning bylaw amendment application. We have speakers. Kate Cooper. Good morning, Ms. Cooper. Welcome. I know you know the routine here. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good morning, councillors, members of council, members of the community, staff. My name is Kate Cooper. I'm the planning consultant acting on behalf of the landowner of 1 Blue Goose, and I just wanted to take a couple of moments to thank staff, I know that many of them are here this morning, for working so hard with us over the last 3 years to get to the point we are at today. There's been many, many meetings, lots of correspondence. Also thank Councillor Grimes for meeting with us and discussing this. We're very excited to be to this point as a final report, and we look forward to working with staff through the site plan application. So on behalf of David Barr from Allegra Homes, the Allegra consulting team, and the rest of the team, we just wanted to thank staff and council at this time.
Great. Questions? I just have a few. So we're going to have 18 new rental units there, correct?
That's correct.
And a couple I've negotiated to be affordable?
Yes.
And that's for 10 years, correct?
That's right.
And then the parking, could you just maybe quickly explain the parking?
Sure. So
we're going to have townhouse kind of around the old Blue Goose building. So there's the townhouse parking and then the parking for the Blue Goose. Can you just explain how that's going to work?
That's correct. So there is parking internal to the site. There's parking that's going to be allocated to the suites that are above, the existing suites that are above the tavern. And then there's also visitor parking for the proposed 12 freehold units that are along the perimeter of the site. Each of those units has their own parking and a rear garage underneath a deck. And then we also have 7 legal boulevard spaces that will remain. And we are working with city transportation right now for a payment in lieu of parking application, which is currently being processed through transportation.
Okay, and the use of the main floor of the Blue Goose building?
It will be a restaurant.
A restaurant?
Yes, it's going to remain as a restaurant. And the tavern has a microbrewery in the basement, and then on the second to fourth floors, there'll be the residential suites.
Yeah, so I know you had a chance to attend the public consultation. Would you say that the main concern, again, the community, they were happy the building was going to be saved, but parking was the major concern?
That's correct. Parking was a major concern. We worked very hard with transportation services and our transportation consultant BA group to get to a point where staff was very comfortable with the parking situation, and we believe also that the 7 Boulevard spaces that are legal will also help to alleviate some of the parking constraints.
Great. Those are my questions. Thank you. I was going to ask questions up, but I think I'm good. So I will just hand the chair to Councillor Ford. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations. 7.1, I also have an amendment. I'd like to request Transportation Service to examine the streets in the immediate vicinity of 1 Blue Goose Street as part of the site plan control review process to identify additional on-street parking spaces in consultation with local councillor. Not looking to move in front of single-family residential, but to see if we can maybe pick up a few spots on the street. With the building being saved and the restaurant going in, back in the old days, a couple of years ago on Sundays, the Pie Guys play there. It's a kind of a historic band that plays there. It's very active on Sundays. So we're hoping that we pick up some of that parking to make sure that that restaurant thrives and we're not interrupting the neighbors. So with that, I'll move those staff recommendations. I'm going to say a lot of my comments for the heritage designation, which is coming up with the Blue Goose, but I'm happy to move the staff recs and with my amendment. So on my amendment, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item is amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.2, final report 170, the West Mall zoning bylaw amendment application. Are there any speakers on 7.2, 170, the West Mall? 170, the West Mall? No speakers? Bring it to committee. I will move the staff recommendations. All in favor? And plus the supplementary report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.10. Probably should have dealt with these together. Alterates the heritage property to designate under Part 1V, Section 20, the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement, number 1, the Blue Goose, with speakers Thomas Paine. Mr. Paine here? Thomas Paine. Any other speakers on number 10? Oh, it's time for 10:15? Okay, I'm sorry, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. Okay, we'll skip over that one, hold that down. 7.11, alteration to well, that's 10:15. Okay, let's go to 7.9, preliminary report, 250 Wincock Drive and 4620 Eglinton Avenue West. Zoning bylaw amendment application. We have a couple of speakers. John DeSalvo. Is John here? Good morning, John. Welcome, sir, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is John DeSalvo. I live in the Richmond Gardens area at Wincott and Islington. I've been in the community for 30 years, and I'm here representing the Richmond Gardens Ratepayers Association. I'm the president of that association. Over the past 4 or 5 years, our community has been under a lot of stress with a lot of new things happening there, and the Richview Square Plaza has been a great plaza serving the community. In November 2016 was the first we heard when this plaza was going to be redeveloped by the new owners. At that time, I approached John Campbell, the councillor at the time, and asked that we meet with the developer. We met with them in 2017, January. At that time, I told Matthew Lang from Trinity that we were not opposed to development, but we wanted something that would improve the quality of life for the community. We then met with the people of Build Toronto, and we shared the same message with them. We were there to work with them and make sure that what they built would improve the quality of life for the community. We did not oppose development. Over a course of a year, they arranged, Build Toronto arranged for a consulting company, Brooke Pooney, to come out and meet 3 times with the community. We shared with them our concerns and what we wanted, and they put together a report, and it was submitted to the developer. It became obvious that the developer did not really listen or care what we had to say, and the first proposal included 2 towers, three towers, two of them 22 stories and one of 16 stories, completely against what we had told them as a community. And we continue to meet with them, and we continue to say to them that we would like development, but it's got to serve the community. They had more meetings with us, and at the end they came back with a resubmission that in fact includes even more density and more height as well too. So basically this developer, along with Bill Toronto's, completely ignored what the community has asked for. And there are many things here. I don't want to get into technicalities. We've met with the city planner, Neil Cresswell, and the others, and they know all the issues that have been raised. We're not going to get into all those details. So what we would like to have happen here is what city staff has recommended, which is to completely reject this proposal as it stands and look for ways to work with the community to develop something that is more in line with the character of the community and with what will improve the quality of life. And on page 8 of the report from city staff, they've raised a lot of issues, so I don't want to get into it all, but they basically said staff are of the opinion the original and revised proposals do not conform with the official plan policies, as the height, density, and massing are not consistent with the local low-density context of the area and present an unacceptable level of intensification. So our message is that at this point, part of that land is owned by the city, and they're responsible to the community. They need to come back out to the community, inform us as to why this resubmission makes sense, and explain to us why they think they should go forward. And we recommend that this could be completely rejected as it stands at this point. And we're prepared to still work with them to see how we can find a solution that is acceptable to the community and also to them. And, you know, I'm of the opinion, I'm a businessman myself, and, you know, if the thinking is that they bought this land, paid a lot of money, and they deserve to make a profit, an excess profit, that's their problem, it's not our problem. So.
Thank you, Mr. DeSalvo. You have a question by Councillor Holiday.
Good morning, Mr. DeSalvo. Thanks for coming.
Good morning.
Now, I know you're here on behalf of the association in the neighborhood and that you've put a lot of work into that, but I want to ask you something more personal as a resident, as somebody that's out there talking to your neighbors on this. The report is interesting. It shows something that I don't see very often. There was an old proposal back in 2018 for a bunch of buildings and a number of units and so much GFA, and then the applicant came and made a second submission. Usually on a second submission, we see things begin to constrain. It's the old, you know, make a high bid and then we'll work our way down to something. But in this case, there's more. They're proposing, first time they said we want 671 units, now they want 773. And then they started out with 73,000 square meters, and now they've gone to almost 78,000 square meters of GFA. How did you feel when you found out the second submission? And maybe how did your neighbors, and I want to feel, how do you feel about this when you see that?
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part, is that they basically gave us more of what we were not asking for. It's like shoving more down your throat. You know what we gave you, we're going to give you more of it. And they're creating a very confrontational situation, not one that's saying we're prepared to work with you. And so as a community, we're very upset with what's going on. And we're taking the position now that we have to become confrontational with them as well too. They're not planning on listening to us. They just want what they want, and they don't care what we have to say.
Now, this is a preliminary report, and you recognize, and you can concur with me, you recognize we're still early in the stage. We've gone through a couple of cycles, so this report is going to allow the planning department to meet with you on an official basis for a community consultation, because all the work so far has been, I'm not going to say informal, but not part of the process. And you understand that this will come back again, potentially come back again to community council before it can be decided upon. And do you think the community is clear on that we're still at the beginning of the process?
Okay.
A couple of things that are important about this report, and I just want to make sure you were sensitive to it and you picked up on it, was that there were some very strong words mentioned here by the planning department about its compatibility and about its integration with the community. Would you concur with planning sentiment that
Oh, there's a lot of
these
things.
concerns should be highlighted at this?
I mean, I've highlighted a lot of things here. I mean, I could spend time going through all this stuff that I've highlighted, but absolutely, what I'm getting the sense of, the city staff is listening to us. They appreciate what we're saying. They are open to listening to us, and they get it. And so they've made it official. We've had people in our community that have written reports and submitted them as well too, very detailed reports outlining all the issues of what they proposed. And it's obvious that the developer is ignoring all this stuff. So they're way offside with what they're proposing.
Now, I think it's really important to understand here, does the community want nothing to be built, or is the community very much of the view that, you know, we've got an official plan in the city, we've got zoning, we've got a whole bunch of controls and policies that help us understand what is appropriate? Is everyone kind of crossing their arms and saying, well, we don't want anything? Or do they just want to get back to what the official plan says and what our policies are and build something that is acceptable and works with the neighborhood?
Absolutely. From day one, when we first met, we said, we're not here to say no. We're here to work with you, but we want something that's going to improve the quality of life for the community and work with what the present rules are, the laws are in place. So, you know, this mid-rise concept is what we're looking for.
I guess my last question is the community prepared to roll up their sleeves, knowing that this is a long and complex process? And, you know, this council here has gone through it lots of times, all these councilors. You know, you can have a situation where everyone in the community just says, you know what, just vote it away and make it go away, versus you've got people on board, you've got some experts in these things, and you want to dig into this stuff and see if you can come up with a solution, as opposed to trying to obstruct it. But tailor this proposal for something that works with the community or is going to be satisfactory to most people involved.
Yeah, we've already reached out to an architect, Michael Spaziani, that's working with us, and he's come up with some ideas. We're going to be also reaching out to a few other professionals to help us, because we do want something that will make us proud of what the community has. And so again, we're not saying no development, but it's got to be something that fits into the community. And to me, what they're proposing, it's almost like you know, a 20,000 square foot house on the bridle path. On its own, it looks beautiful. You know, they show us these pictures. On their own, it looks beautiful. But you take that 20,000 square foot house in the bridle path and you plop it on Wincott. People are going to drive by and say, what's that doing here? It does not fit. And that's the message we're trying to get across to them. You know, it's nice to have these pictures of what they're presenting and they look great on their own, but it's not designed for this part of the city. That's more for a downtown type of place.
My last question, it's an easy one. As the leader of the association and somebody who lives in the neighborhood, do you have some hope? Do you have some hope that you might be able to reach a solution?
Well, the hope I have is yourself, Councillor Holiday. You've been very cooperative working with us. Neil Cresswell from the city planner has been very cooperative working with us. Initially, the people at Build Toronto showed some signs that they were going to work with us. I don't know who the leadership is there now. I don't think Bill Brick is there anymore, so we haven't communicated with them. And with the developer, I don't know. I had a chance to say hello to Matthew Lang outside this morning, and I told him what we thought. I haven't talked to him in a while. We're prepared to sit down with them and work with them, but they got to be willing to accommodate. I mean, they basically said, we don't care, and they gave us more of what we said they don't want. So we're here to work with them. We're not here to cause unnecessary confrontation, but they have to be prepared to work with us. So,
Thank you. Any further questions?
thank you.
Councillor Perruzza?
I just want to focus your attention a little bit on parking and parking numbers that are allowed for developments, because I'm having all kinds of issues with these new subdivisions that were built in a new part of a district that I took on that I didn't represent before. And now people are coming to me and they want to, you know, we're getting into fist fights about parking, and people just want, you know, like more parking space, and they want the city to create parking lots. I guess my question is this: have you thought at all about the parking ratios that the city gives to development, and do you think that we should be rethinking that? I mean, do people still drive in the suburbs?
Well, I don't
Drive
know
your car.
if you
There you go, 2 cars per
You know what?
family.
I was involved with the LRT that they wanted to build at Surface with that community, with a group of people. There's 12 of us there. We spent a year working with them as well too. And the mindset is that everybody should be taking transit. You know, that's the kind of message there. It's not possible. It's just not possible. Now, things are changing. Driverless cars and all that is happening. I get that, but right now we can't get around without cars. You need the cars, and that.
So let me ask you the question another way. Parking is often a big either a permitter of or reducer of density. Councillor Holliday talked about GFA, right? Because you know, you need to be able to create parking spots if you allow greater parking ratios. One of the things that we as a city do, and city planners will concede this point, is that we are now allowing development in the suburbs with a much lower expectation of what the parking that needs to be created per unit. Once you concede that it's done, then it's basically at the Ontario Municipal Board and it's all over, right? Then you're talking about, you know, facade more than anything else, right? Do you think, do you believe that we need to be revisiting the parking ratios that we are allowing in the that we are conceding in the suburbs to developers and development right off the bat?
You mean allowing for less parking? Is that what you're asking, or?
Yeah, what you're going to see, what you're going to read through those reports when you get down to it, they're going to say to you that there's adequate transit in the neighborhood, so your parking ratio has to be 0.75 or 0.60 or 0.50, half a parking spot per unit. That determines basically your density.
I
Mr.
don't see
Lopez
cars
looking at me
going
really
away
clearly
anytime
and
soon.
saying, yeah,
Council-
he's just not
Council
nodding
puts a
at it.
question, there's not a discussion.
The question is, should we, not we the city council, we the city planning staff, be looking at parking ratios and with a view, not holistically across the city saying we should have a parking standard that's uniform from the lake to Steeles, from Mississauga to Pickering, but rather locally in the suburbs. You agree that people still love their cars and love to drive and need parking for them.
We need to use our cars. Whether you use the word love is a different issue, but we need to use our cars to get around. It's not possible to move around the city without our cars. It's just not possible. I mean,
Councilor Brutz, we're going to stick, this is getting off topic. We're talking what's before us here. Okay, we're talking city as general, we're going to stick to what we're talking about here, please. Okay. Okay, I just have a very quick question. You said city staff have been great, city planning's been great, and I didn't hear you say, but what about Create TO? Part of this project is city lands.
Well,
have you had any consultation with Create TO?
yeah, we started with them. We met them quite a few times as an executive committee. We met with them, Bill Brick and the people. They assured us that they would listen to us, that public land was going to be an issue that would be used for the community at large. It wasn't just going to be used to help the developer optimize his profits.
Who assured you?
Bill Brick at the time.
Those are my questions.
And I don't know where he's at right now. We haven't communicated with him in a while, but they started in a very positive way, which then led to Brooke Pooney Consultants to come on board, and they gathered there's reports on everything that the community said, but as I mentioned, those reports seem to have been put aside, and the developer continued to proceed on their own path and not listen to us. And
Those are my questions. Thank you, sir. No, we have a question from other speakers. Thank you. Our next speaker is Trustee Marcus DeMonaco from Ward 2, Toronto Catholic District School Board. Trustee DeMonaco, welcome, sir. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I'm here representing Ward 2, Catholic Ward 2, which is south of Dixon. It's Etobicoke Centre, as you know. north of Bloor. The reason I'm here is I've often found the missing element in discussions like this is how it's going to impact the schools. Because residents in Etobicoke Centre value their school system very, very much. Many, many residents have told me they moved specifically to our area for the good schools. The schools are excellent, they're high quality. However, there is a problem. As a new trustee, I have discovered, and I actually knew before I ran, but I have now discovered in depth the problem that we have in Ward 2. It's a very significant problem. We have massive overcrowding of our elementary and our secondary schools. And just as an example, there is only one secondary school, of Catholic secondary school, in Etobicoke Centre in Ward 2. That is Michael Power. It has a director's cap. In other words, the director of education has said there can be no more children attending, no more students attending. Bishop Allen has 169% over the scheduled attendance. It is very, very significant. If this condo development goes forward with increased numbers, let alone the numbers that exist, it is going to be a disaster if they think when they buy that condo, they're going to a Catholic school. If they're Catholic and they want to go to a Catholic elementary school, their choice will be Father Sarah or St. Marcellus. Most likely Father Sarah. I can tell you right now, Father Sarah is full. All Saints is full. St. Marcellus is full. St. Eugene is full. They will not move into that condo, and unfortunately, they will not move in and go to our kindergarten program. Or it's impossible. We do not have the space for them. It's not that we don't want them. As Catholic schools, we have an open arm policy to all Catholic residents that want to attend. But I think it's time that council and your school boards, both my public school friend and a colleague, Dan McLean from the public board, and myself as a representative of Catholic schools, that we work together more closely, because these units will be, they're not just units in the sky. They're units going to be filled with children in some of the condos. Families are going to move in, and they're going to wonder why we had this discussion and we never questioned where do they go to school. I think most of the residents here, when they moved into Etobicoke, came here for the great living and the living environment and the ability to go to a high-quality school. And I'm here as your Catholic representative to say there isn't space. So it's a very, very significant concern that I've not heard in the public discussion as much as I think possibly it should be, with the greatest of respect. And I think that we need to incorporate that element into the presentation. And I will, in all transparency, say that I'm also a resident that lives near the Richview Plaza. I have spoken to Mayor Tory about it. People that live in this area, they don't want to live at Bathurst and St. Clair. That's why they live in Etobicoke Centre, many of them. They want an environment free from congestion and free from massive parking issues, which will occur if this plaza development, this condo development goes forward. The numbers are outrageous, and I'll say that as a resident. The numbers are completely outrageous for the character and the nature of that property and for the surrounding area. It is not in keeping with why the residents live there. And I would hope, and I know that you will appreciate that, and I hope that you take that into consideration. And as your Catholic representative for Ward 2, I must let you know there is no more room at the inn. As much as we would want it, we do not have the funding to build more, and we cannot accommodate them. So that is my presentation.
Trustee, you have a couple questions? You have a question?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So, Councillor Ford?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Trustee Domenico, for coming to Community Council. And I completely understand your deposition here and wholeheartedly agree. I may be stretching on this, on the item, so if I can have a little leniency, Mr. Chair. I know there's been discussions for the last few years on Scarlet Heights. I am just using this opportunity to see where that stands in conversations with the TDSB and the TCDSB.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ford. Yes, Scarlet Heights was a major concern. We were hoping that the TDSB, the Public Board, was going to surplus it and release it. And I worked closely with the public trustee on that. We were extremely close to getting that deal done, and then York Memorial burned down. So the York Memorial students will now, in accordance with the public board, be shipped to Scarlet Heights on a temporary basis, but that could be 2, 3, 4, we don't know.
Right.
It's a property they own, we want it, but until it's available, we can do nothing about it. So unfortunately, we remain with the problem of massive overcrowding of high schools.
Right. And my last question is, has there been any conversations on temporarily reopening operationally Don Bosco? And has there been any conversations around that to ease the pressure, whether it's temporarily, permanently?
Yes, that's a great question. Before we heard the decision of the public board to use Scarlet Heights for York Memorial, I had moved a motion and was approved by the board for staff to come back with a Plan B for our residents for secondary school. There's never been a Plan B. The entire plan was hoping that the TDSB would allow Scarlet Heights to be sold. I've asked for staff to come up with a Plan B. Whether Don Bosco is included in that or not, I'm not sure. I'm open to anything that the residents of my ward want to have happen. Unfortunately, as you know, Don Bosco was closed because the residents would not attend, and the school eventually has been closed and is now rented. But never say never.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Nunziata has a question?
Yeah, it's just one question. Well, hopefully York Memo will not take that long to rebuild, which is my word. But just, you are aware, though, that, and it has been for years, that whenever a development application comes in, it is circulated to the school boards for comment on every application. And in the past, we've always heard comments from the school board is, you know, no comments, or we don't have an issue. Now, I think it's important that every development application that comes in, that there is dialogue with the school boards at the same time. So I think it's important, and do not agree with me, that the boards get more involved in development applications than they have in the past, because in the past they've been very silent on any applications that have come forward to council.
I agree with you, Councillor Nunziata. In fact, as a new trustee, I was not in favor of the system where the board simply just did nothing, did not respond. That's why I'm here today, is to work with you to be a more active trustee, to say, if we work together, this could actually be planned properly. For our board and our former trustee to not engage properly, I think is not a good idea.
Yeah. It's just that in the past, we haven't really had any involvements, and every application that I've seen come forward in the past, there's either been no comment or we don't have an issue, you know, so, yeah, I'm pleased that you agree with,
Yes,
it has to
yes.
change at the board level as well. Yeah.
That's why I'm here, absolutely.
Councillor Pruitt, a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to better understand. The Catholic Board has access to development charges as it relates to development, does it not?
Yes, we receive educational development charges from development, and you're absolutely right. There is a bit of a two-sided, double-edged sword to this. We do receive money from development, but that money is never enough to build a new school. It is a very, I've personally spoken to former Minister of Education and Deputy Minister about EDCs, about how underfunded they are. We can't buy a property in central Etobicoke for under $5 million an acre, and we can't get it by getting $1,700 or $1,600 from a unit. It's not going to work. So yes, we do receive the charges. We're thankful for them. And the reason we receive them, unlike our friends at the public board, is that we are an expanding, growing board. But in Ward 2, in Etobicoke Centre, there isn't the land and the opportunity to expand properly. So the money which goes into that central pool for all trustees it doesn't make much sense if we can't spend it
But
here.
you also understand that that's the rationale for, it doesn't matter if your schools are full, You get development because you get development charges. You get that, right?
I get it very clearly, but I can't buy land that doesn't exist.
No, Councillor Holliday, question, sorry.
Trustee DiDomenico, thanks for coming today. I think in almost 4.5 years here, I think I saw a rep from a school board come once. So this is the second time. So thank you for doing that. I agree. You've raised a very important point. To the point that sometimes we see signs put up on development site that says "buyer beware." There may not be room in the local school. So something that parents definitely need to think about. I just wondered what your proposal was. I agree that we should be working together. Are you in a position to rally the forces at the school board to join with us, to get a planner or somebody at the school board to work with us on this proposal and other proposals so that we can do as you suggested, plan early on to see what we can figure out as this thing unfolds?
Well, my plan is threefold. One is, as you've said, to engage the Toronto Catholic District School Board in a way that I think it has never been engaged, to work with council. Number two is to work with the Richmond Gardens Residents Association. Mr. DeSalvo has done excellent work with that. And three, as a resident and as a neighbor, to engage people. That's how I worked with my campaign. It's all about getting people involved. And we're very concerned about the density and about the lack of availability for these children to attend any of our schools.
So there's two possible outcomes. The first is to build the infrastructure that's required to support a development of a certain size. And you talked to us a little bit about how that's difficult for you because of the availability of land. And the other side is to restrict the scale of the development, right? So that whatever growth there is can match our capacity in terms of infrastructure. And it doesn't have to be your school board. It could be the other school board, could be the sewer pipes, could be that. Are you able to rally the weight of the school board to intervene on these processes and to go somewhere like the OMB or the LPAT, I guess is the proper name, and make that argument that, we as a school board have X capacity and we recommend to you that you curtail this development? So, they weigh in planning principles that say, that the site can accommodate this, good planning can accommodate this, but take the infrastructure point of view, and as the guardian of the infrastructure, the person responsible for it, say, we're raising the alarm bell, this is what we can do. I'm not sure I've ever seen that argument put forward at the OMB, and as my colleagues have said, it's been quiet, it's been silent. Do you think you can rally the force to help us on that, to push back?
Yes, I think I can, and I agree with everything you've said. We have been silent, and I think that's the wrong approach. I will certainly move a motion and work with staff at TCDSB to take a more proactive approach, because we can't complain about overcrowded schools if we allow development in our areas that exasperates the problem. We have to get engaged with you. I know I've worked with you, Councillor Holliday, and I really appreciate everything you do for our community, and that's why I'm here today, is to say I want to partner with you. I want to be the voice, and I am the voice of the Catholic residents, but I want our board, the weight of the board, to work with council and to assist you in looking at the holistic approach, not just can we park there, but where do these children go to school? And I don't have an answer for you. I don't like to be the bearer of bad news and say, I'm sorry, the schools are closed. That's not in our faith, and it's not in our belief system. We want to be open to the residents, Catholic residents, to come to our schools, but we literally can't get any more children in the building. And that's a very, very significant problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, to speak, Councillor Holliday. Or questions of staff? Councillor Holliday? No, Councillor Holliday, speak.
I have one quick question, Staff.
Councillor Perruzza?
Yeah, what's typically the parking ratio in a development like this in this area? Just even a range if you've got.
So, through the chair, so just for information purposes, we reviewed the application, and In terms of parking, we are comfortable, Transportation Services is comfortable applying the parking requirements of the new citywide harmonized bylaw. And according to that bylaw, they need 808 parking spaces. The proponent is providing 1,200 parking spaces.
But what's the ratio?
It generally varies by type of residential unit. It can go from all the way from 0.8 spaces per unit up to, I believe, 1.2, depending upon whether it's a one-bedroom unit, two-bedroom unit, or three or more bedroom unit.
So 0.8
0.8, yes.
to point,
1.2 for the larger type of bedroom units.
so that would be like 0.8 means like, I don't know, 80% of a car? Well, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It means that technically you don't have a parking spot if you have a car, right?
Correct.
0.8.
Yeah, 0.8,
Right.
yeah.
Then you got to add another 0.8 to it, and it creates 1.5 spots, and it create one spot. So 2.8 creates one spot, one parking spot, correct?
Creates 1.6 spots.
Well, 1.6, right, but you can't park 1.5 cars, so you park one car. Then you need to get what, like 4.8s to get 2 spots, right? 2 parking spots.
You would get 2.4.
2.4, right. So I just wanted to point that out. but
Yeah, no,
thank
fair
you.
He
enough.
knows.
Okay. All right.
Councillor Hall, you speak.
Thank you to staff, my colleagues, the speakers today. I'd like to place a very small motion. This is a complex site, so I'm going to request that some additional information come from Create TO on just how this arrangement works. So it's not a routine development. I'm just speaking to my colleagues here. It is something that is done in partnership with the City of Toronto. If you know the site, you realize there's a big plaza there, and then there's a land reserve strip between the plaza and Eglinton Avenue that's currently vacant. And so the concept is that we would join the city-owned piece of site and the privately owned plaza together to create one to get the best product out of that. And we're going through that process. So I think some of that information on how that works would be valuable to the members of this community, to the members of this committee when reading all of the planning components together. So that's for the future. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about what's before us today. As we know, it's a preliminary report. We're not making any decisions on this right now. We are choosing as a community council to advance this process and to set up a community consultation meeting. But planning staff have obviously been working on it, and they've brought forward some big concerns in this report. And I think the community should take comfort in that some things have been seen that need to be worked on. You know, for instance, the parking raised by my colleague, Councillor Peruzza. I mean, I can tell you in my conversations with the Residents Association and the depth of work that's been going on in this, there's a guy that's been doing calculations to see how quickly the cars go up and down the ramp. Never mind, is there enough parking? Can the cars get in and out of the building fast enough to make sure that there isn't congestion on the road? So that's the level of detail that's being examined on this by the community, and ergo, that will be presented to us as a critique of what's being put forward. I'm looking very much, as I do with other developments, and working with the community to that level of depth that we need to look at in this proposal. A couple of things that I want to speak about that are very, very important is some of the discussion here about density in this report. And we had this very unusual situation where there was one density proposed and then it went up. And that hasn't been received well by the community and not received well by myself. So I look forward to a process where that is going to change. The other thing I wanted to point out, and it's cited in a paragraph in here, and again, I'll raise it to my colleagues. We have this situation where we have that Eglinton frontage, and then we've got a plaza there that's currently functioning. And part of the proposal is to keep the back of the plaza kind of wedged between Eglinton Avenue and the residential development and some new commercial on the main level. And then there's this strip left over. And one of the things that's spoken to is a bit about master planning in this. The proposals so far have only addressed to keep that old plaza the way it is. I'm sure they'll improve it. The developers realize that there needs to be marketable space, but I'm trying to think long-term, multi-decades here about what this site will mean and do for the long haul. And if there's some visions on what that site could be over the long haul, I think we should have that conversation with the community right now. So I cannot underscore enough the importance of something like the master plan in this process. And I look forward to going through that with the applicant and with the staff. Again, I think this is going to be a journey forward. Everyone seems to be rolling up their sleeves and doing what they need to do to try to arrive at the best possible proposal. That is something that works for the developer, that works for the city as part of the landowners, and most importantly, works for the community. I'm a part of that community as well, not just as a representative, but somebody that lives in the area, knows the plaza well, and has seen it and used it for decades. So this is a really, really big deal in central Etobicoke. It's profound, and I think we need to take our time, make sure we get it right. I look forward to the advice so far, but I also will make signal that there are some really important things that need to happen before we're anywhere near a position, I'm anywhere near a position to support this, and the community is anywhere near in a position to support this. So we'll see what happens over the next number of months. And I will urge my colleagues to support the preliminary report, as that is the orderly thing to do at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, Councillor Holiday's moved the staff recs with an amendment. The amendment's on the screen. All in favor? Clause is amended. All in favor? That carries. Okay, we're going to head back to 7.10, alterations to heritage property, intention to designate Part 1V, Section 20 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter in a heritage agreement, 1 Blue Goose Street. Is Thomas Paine, architect here? Thomas Paine? Thomas Paine? Any further speakers to the item? Oh. Hi.
Thomas actually is not here. We're not sure if he had registered to speak. I'm the planning consultant on the file. I'm not a heritage architect or an architect, but if I can try to answer questions.
No,
if you have any.
we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Seeing no further speakers to the item, I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations to list, to designate the number 1 Blue Goose Street, which is the Blue Goose Tavern, the old Windsor House. It's been, I think, one of the Shemy boys at the back there. He's hiding. I think he might be here another item, but the Shemy family owned this for 50, 60 years, and that's the last owner, but it was in the family. Mr. Shemy back there was his grandfather's at the time. It went down, and I had a great chance to talk to Terry Shemy, his father, who was looking to retire, and the kids are, I think you're probably a planning consultant now, so I didn't want to get into the business, but it was a shame to see the Blues go. It was a staple in Mimico for many, many years. People know it now as the Blue Goose. There's been many Stanley Cup parties there, Grey Cup parties there. Special guests have been there. I remember I was in Chicago. I was in the Chicago Blackhawk dressing room, and I was walking through, and Coach Quenville said to me, David Boland, who won the cup and brought it to the Blue Goose, he said, this is Councillor Grimes from Mimico, and Quenville says to me, how's the Blue Goose doing? He wanted to know how the Blue Goose, but everyone knows that the teams that went there, the Leafs used to go there after practice, the teachers would go there Friday afternoons. A lot of the kids in the community would have their first drink there. I know most of my kids did. That's where you went, and you would take your son there. I met my father-in-law there. I had to go with him on Sunday. We have to go up there, but it was actually from 3:30 to 5:30 exactly on the clock, and it's just a great place. It's going to be missed. So the building was the old Windsor House. You see the pictures that used to hang on the back wall. That was the original building, but it kind of went through some stages. But people know it as the Blue Goose for the last 60 years. And I think if this didn't happen here today, I probably would have been in a public shaming, or some gallows probably would have been built for me. But I'm glad that we're going to save this building. It's just an icon, and just so much history there, just not on the outside, but inside, if those walls could talk. Right, Mr. Shemy? But anyways, I'm pleasure to move this designation, and I'm going to ask for a recorded vote. All in favor? Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Ford, Councillor Grimes, Councillor Holiday, Councillor Prucha, that carries.
The teachers went there on a Friday afternoon.
They used to, yeah. Okay, 7-11, alteration to 2 designated heritage properties, 69 Long Branch Avenue and 24 Marine Avenue. Are there any speakers on 69 or 24 Marine Avenue? Seeing none. Questions of staff? Seeing none. Happy to move the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, 7.5, request for director's report, 555, the West Mall zoning bylaw amendment application. We have a number of speakers. Our first speaker is Tony Polplesta from Lowsfields. Tony? Tony, I'm sorry. Could you pronounce your last name?
Volpentesta.
There we go. Volpentesta. Thank you. Good morning, sir. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
We'll translate that later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the Community Council. I'm here on behalf of 555 The West Mall Limited. I'm joined here today by Mark Zwicker from Architecture Unfolded. He's the project architect. Where's Mark? Right there. And I guess not a very cooperative microphone. I won't touch it again. And part of the Shemi Segway, I'm here with Mark Shemi, who's here on behalf of 555 The West Mall Limited, the owner of the subject lands. I must start by thanking the Planning Department for a comprehensive request for directions report that was dated June 21st, 2019, which provides a detailed analysis of the revised proposal and recommends to this Community Council attendance at LPAT in support of the revised proposal. What you have before you today is a revised proposal of a 22-story purpose-built rental building containing 256 units on a site occupied by an existing 14-story rental apartment building containing 119 residential units at 555 The West Mall. The existing rental building will be retained, and new amenities, both indoor and outdoor, included in the new purpose-built rental building will be shared between both buildings. The original application was filed in November of 2016 and has been the subject of community consultation and many discussions and meetings with city planning staff. A revised proposal was filed on April 30th of this year. The major revisions since the original application, they're outlined in the request for directions report, but it's very important. The report was released on Friday. It's very important for the community members present today to be reminded of the nature of the changes, and I will quickly review them. The revision includes a reduced building height from 24 to 22 stories. In terms of a geodetic number, 69.1 meters to 61.4 meters. There's been a decrease in the proposed number of dwelling units from 293 to 256, representing a 37 unit or 13% reduction. There's been a reduction in the GFA, the gross floor area, from 22,061 square meters to 17,928, excuse me. That represents a 19% reduction. There is a reduced tower floor plate size from the original of 882 square meters to 750 square meters. That's in keeping with the tall building guidelines. Of importance to the community members present, that slender floor plate would result in a fast-moving shadows and greater sky views between the two buildings, both the proposed and the existing. There's an increased separation distance from 25 to 26 meters between the existing and proposed apartment buildings. There's an increase in the east and west tower setbacks from 10 to 15 meters. There's increased podium setbacks from 0.5 meters to 3 meters for the integrated two-story loading garage. There's a relocation of the proposed parking ramp from the west to the east side of the new building in order to provide safety and continuity of the proposed walkway connection from the West Mall to the front door of the building. There's added shared amenity areas to the 6th floor terrace facing west. There's an added outdoor playground area, dog run area, and mini soccer pitch. Importantly, the garbage pickup areas has been relocated from the outside of the existing building to inside of the proposed building. There's screening for the proposed garbage pickup loading area, truck turnaround area with trees to mitigate potential impacts, and there's been a reduction in the hard surface area and added soft landscaping throughout the site. As noted in great detail in the Planning Department report, the revised proposal also includes a Section 37 cash contribution to be used towards streetscaping along the West Mall, capital upgrades to the TCH building at 539 the West Mall, improvements to local parks, and improvements to the Etobicoke Olympium Community Center. Importantly, the existing 14-story rental apartment building will be preserved for a 20-year period. The Planning Department report also addresses such issues as shadow impact, height and density, and the proposed building, and concludes that the proposed building is supportable as a compatible infill intensification. We welcome your questions, but we're also here to listen to the community and answer questions that they may have as well. Those were my intended remarks, and I've exhausted my 5 minutes.
Questions, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you for speaking to us today. One thing that I had heard about was concerns over parking and the level of, let's back up with the basics. This is a rental or a condominium building?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a purpose-built rental building.
It's a purpose-built. So the owner is going to retain and bear responsibility for the underground parking garage on behalf of the tenants. You're not selling parking spots to anybody.
That's correct.
Okay. So what did your consultant say in terms of the traffic impact to the West Mall? Because people have brought this up with me, and they're very worried that additional traffic from this building is going to create congestion on the West Mall and cause a problem. What did your study of the parking say at the end of the day?
The supporting study with specific regard to parking referred back to the harmonized zoning bylaw in terms of the requisite requirement. It would fall into the category of all other areas in the zoning bylaw. That resulted in a parking requirement of 435 parking spaces, which is what's being proposed on the site today.
So you're proposing, or you're providing the maximum level in the bylaw of parking that you're required to provide?
We satisfy that minimum, yes.
Okay, and then
and perhaps Mr. Nicolucci could expand on that later.
We'll get to him, but in terms of load on the street, people coming in and out of the driveway, are you familiar with what your consultant said? Did they find that acceptable, unacceptable? What is the loading of the vehicles on the street?
They found that it's an acceptable level of service in terms of the functioning of the driveway, the functioning of local streets and local intersections.
Okay. I am concerned about members of the community that have brought forward concerns. There were two sort of major groups. There were the people that lived in the existing building at 555 the West Mall, and there were people that were involved with 551 the West Mall, which is the condominium immediately next door. Can you tell me what were your interactions with the community at 551 the West Mall? Did you engage with them? Did you speak to their board? Did you meet with them? What happened?
Maybe perhaps I should defer to Mr. Shemy, who had conducted those meetings himself with other representatives of the owner. So I will defer to Mr. Shemy.
Good morning. Yes, so we've been working with the condo board of 551 the West Mall since July 2017. So the initial meeting was facilitated by you, Councillor, and we met with Robert Uhrig, who is the former president of YCC 26, and another member of the council along with the architect, and they provided a comprehensive letter, outlined their concerns, and then we had a subsequent meeting in October 2017 with our revised proposal, which addressed some of their concerns. And we've had ongoing discussions, and there has been a slight turnover on the condo board, and we've most recently met with the new president, Paul Christian, and another member of the board as of April to kind of provide an overview and history. I think the main issue discussed earlier was the location of the garbage ramp, the car ramp, which has been relocated towards the center of the building, and ensuring that all the garbage was enclosed.
Is there anything new, or has the condo board been brought through this process so that they were clear and understanding? And I understand that they may not agree with everything you're doing, but was there conversations throughout?
Yes, correct. We've had extensive conversations for over a year.
Now, I know early in the process you asked me, and was that my advice to you, was to make sure that as a good developer and as a good neighbor, you're going to be having conversations with the condominium next door and addressing their concerns.
Correct. And as a purpose-built rental owner, we're not building a condo and leaving. It's in our interest to make sure that the development functions both currently and moving forward. So we want to be good neighbors and work with our neighbors throughout, and we have been.
Now, the people that live in the existing building at 555 the West Mall, I mean, they're part of this process too. Did you engage with them in any way? And I'll make note that the relationship is a little different because you're the owner of that property, and they're your tenants. But but they still are people that live there and are gonna have to put up with and look at any changes to the site.
Correct. We've had 2 open houses with our tenants. The first was in February of 2017, just to provide, in the lobby, an open house, provide plans and letting them know that an application has been submitted. We had a second open house in, it was in, I think, December 2018, where we provided an update because a lot of time had passed by and showed them a revised proposal.
And what do they get out of this proposal?
So one of the comments was that they needed more visitor parking, so we're going to be substantially increasing the visitor parking in the underground parking garage and the improved amenities. The tenants in the existing building will have complete access to the ground floor amenities of the new building. The ground floor is of the new building is completely used for amenities, and all the tenants of the existing building will have access to those amenities as well as the outdoor amenities at no additional cost.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Perruzza.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the parking for a sec. You mentioned 435 spots. What's the ratio there? Same as the other bylaw, 0.80 to?
Yes, exactly as Mr. Nicolucci stated. He gave you a ratio by bedroom type, and that's exactly what would apply in this case.
Right, so for example, the first apartment that someone rents, they technically don't have a parking spot. So if they've got a car, they got no place to park it.
If you were proposing one unit.
Right, so the first apartment, if you're providing 0.8 of a parking spot, that doesn't fit a car, so that first apartment doesn't have a parking spot. So the second apartment would give you 1.6, then now you have between 2 apartments, 1 parking spot. I'm just trying to understand it, right?
Yeah,
in a
through you,
simple way.
Mr. Chairman, of course, as a theoretical notion, going through all the various combinations and permutations of proposed parking ratios, you have to base it on the entire proposal in order to better understand what's being provided.
So 4 apartments, 2 parking spots. 2.4 really gives you only 2 spots, right?
Don't forget, that's a bachelor ratio, right? When you get up to a 1-bedroom, it gets closer to 1, it's at 0.9, and a 2-bedroom unit would have a ratio of 1.
Most of us understand it, most of us understand it this way. So if you have somebody moving into an apartment, the first apartment, the expectation is that they're not going to have a car because they don't have a spot. If they do got a car, they're parking out on some local roads because there's no spot in their building, right?
The proposal meets the parking standard that's applied by the City of Toronto.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to sort of turn our heads to, what that standard is. Yeah. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Okay, our next speaker, Carol Bullen-Felice.
But I think that visuals are a benefit. Up here, it's really awkward because I need to be able to see. Don't look at my. Can I just start with a comment, Ruth? I have to say to Councillor Perruzza, am I pronouncing that correctly? Councillor Perruzza, with regard to needing a car, I thought it was kind of funny because we wouldn't need a car in the suburbs if they didn't build big box stores and Costco's in the suburbs. And also, I think that the brand new Mazda and Mercedes dealerships along the Queensway would severely disagree with not having cars. So just a... Pardon? Yeah, yes. It becomes a vicious circle. Okay. All right. I have, can we restart that? Because I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Carol Boland Felice, and I am an owner living at 551 the West Mall. As an owner, we have invested in our suite to make it our permanent home. And I've indicated by the star that that's where we are when we look straight at 555. I'd like to speak about the location. The site does not fall, the location of 555, the site does not fall within either the Etobicoke Centre Urban Growth Centre nor its secondary plan. The site is 4.4 kilometers to Kipling Station, or a 20-minute bus ride, which is well outside the 800-meter radius of major transit areas, such as TTC subway stops. The now existing master planned multi-tower development projects along the 427 corridor at Eva Road and the former Valhalla site are a minimum of 1.5 kilometers south of 555 and provide no visual context to this site, so it's well south on there. 70 Dixfield to the north and 2 Holiday Drive to the south are examples of low and mid-rise infill developments in the immediate area. Regarding stable neighborhoods, the configuration of the apartment neighborhood abutting the west side of Highway 427, running between Burnhamthorpe and Rathburn, which is indicated here, has existed primarily unaltered for approximately 40 to 50 years. The tallest high-rise is 19 stories, with 4 of the 6 high-rises being 15 stories. This overhead depicts the area of 551's front drop-off outlined in red, overlaid on 555 site. As you can see, our drop-off area is larger than the area proposed for the 22-story, 256-unit building. This clearly demonstrates the disproportionate size and location of the proposed building. Outlined in dark blue here is approximately the area of the proposed building. You will notice that this site is landlocked. This has the potential of setting up a perception of segregation and perhaps elitism. I don't understand how this proposal for a 22-story, 256-unit building on a patch of land along with 4 levels of underground parking has been justified by Starlight in order for city staff to recommend it to be accepted. I believe the answer is Starlight Investments has thrown money at it until it has stuck. And they likely thought it would fly under the objection radar since they did not acknowledge that 551 is a condo and the owners might have a problem with this. I, along with our condominium board president at the time, have met with Starlight Investment representatives on 4 occasions, the first 2 along with Councillor Holiday. Each time we were presented with a new incarnation of proposal drawings. Each time I asked who they expect to rent to in this new building. It will be at and or above market rates. Other than that, they have not done a marketing plan. I do wonder how they are supposed to do good planning when they do not know who they are planning for. It was suggested that the Regent Park redevelopment somehow equates to this proposal, demonstrating how a mix of higher and lower income populations can successfully cohabitate. Regent Park's redevelopment involved years of consultation with many stakeholders to formulate a detailed plan. Did Starlight consult with the many stakeholders in this apartment neighborhood in order to add value to the community? Stakeholders included such people as the TCHC, the neighborhood officers of the East Mall, West Mall neighborhood, The neighborhood officers are dedicated to engaging and working with community members and helping to improve the safety and security of the area. Third, the committee who is spearheading the search for a hub location in the West Mall Etobicoke neighborhood. And of course, the current tenants of 555 the West Mall. I also wonder if they have utilized the 2016 census results to inform their planning. To these questions, I believe the answer would be a definitive no. Please correct me if I am wrong. This is Starlight's first tower infill project. We, being the existing tenants of 555 and the owners at 551, are Starlight's guinea pigs. I also asked why 22 stories rather than 6 stories, which would be more in line with the existing infill developments. The answer was it was not financially viable since it did not reach the critical mass of units, which means that it takes 256 rental units to justify the cost of construction. Simply put, Starlight Investment is inexperienced development and, in development and building. Their core business is maximizing return on investment. All you need to do is read the news and insight section on Starlight's website to realize this. There is no concern for rental affordability, although this is not surprising since it would be inconsistent with maximizing investments. The ensuing chaos of construction and the destabilizing impact of this proposed building on the 119 current tenants of 555 the West Mall and the 305 owners at 551 the West Mall is being completely disregarded.
Carrie, you have to wrap up. I gave you an extra minute.
Okay, this much. This proposal amounts to Starlight imposing on this very established neighborhood a one-off building that is clearly disproportionate in every regard, does not fall within focused development areas, and does not regard its impact on the surrounding community. It will literally be shoehorned into this landlocked site. I implore you to turn down this proposal, not just for the benefit of the West Mall apartment neighborhood, but also for future apartment neighborhoods where Starlight or any other development attempts bully intensification.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Holliday, question?
Carol, thank you for coming, and thank you for your care and the preparation of the materials that you've brought to us. I wanted to get a couple of things clear for my colleagues because they don't know you. Are you here as an individual, or are you here on behalf of the board?
No, I'm here as an individual who is going to be affected.
Okay, and you've been on this since day one.
Day
You
one.
put a lot of time and
I
energy.
saw the sign go up on the
Sure.
next door.
I just want to make sure I'm clear in your advice, and I think you gave it at the very end. Are you suggesting to Community Council to reject the proposal outright and not allow anything to be built? Or is there something in between?
I would say that it's more of a principle thing to say absolutely. Starlight will take every advantage, and because this is their first attempt, I would like it to be a lesson learned. Sorry,
Okay,
it's
and
personal.
Understood. And you're familiar with the circumstances, though, that this is at the LPAT, and I think
Yes.
You may have been involved in that process.
I
So
am.
what's before council is not an approval to say yes or no.
Yeah.
In fact, that decision is now with the province.
Right.
We either have the opportunity today to accept a revised proposal, which is a bit smaller and different than what the original was,
Right.
or we can say no and then leave it to the LPAT to decide what to approve.
I was under the understanding that the city would go and represent and say, yes, that this proposal should go ahead.
So this, so to clarify, I don't know if you're, if.
So am I
have to put it in the
mistaken
form of a
then?
question because I can't.
Okay,
state it,
so,
but that's okay. Let me form it in a phrase of a question. Are you aware that what's before the LPAT is the proposal by the developer, and the developer has made a counter proposal to have something smaller.
Okay.
And the city council has to decide to tell our lawyer either to go to the LPAT and say, no, we don't like it. LPAT, you decide what to put in there.
Right.
Or city council can send the lawyer and say, we can live with what the the applicant has proposed, and at that point, it's likely that there would be a settlement offer.
Exactly.
Is that of your understanding that way?
So essentially, it's an all or nothing to LPAT, that the city would not be there to say, we do not recommend that this is built.
Yeah, so that's the other choice, is that we go to LPAT and say, city council said no, you know, we don't recommend this, and then they have to make the decision on it.
Okay, that's the one that I'm going with.
Fair enough. No, once again, thank you for your care in all of this, and the photos, they help. I know the site, but I know my colleagues may not, so I appreciate it.
And also, I just want to show you that we had a fire in our underground parking, and we needed, the fire trucks were hooked up out directly at the entryway of our building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Paul Christian, President, YYC, number 26.
Morning.
Good morning, Paul. Welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Paul Christian. I am the president of the board of directors of the Condominium Corporation, number 26, located at 551 the West Mall, which is situated immediately south of Starlight property. I'm here to represent the interests and concerns of the owners of 302 units, approximately 1,000 residents, 1,000 family members. I also want to support what Carol has said, everything she says. I certainly agree with the board, certainly agree with her efforts and her position on it. 551 The Grange is the only condominium in the immediate vicinity. Owners have invested their money in its purchase. It is not the same as a renter who can come up and leave at the end of a lease. Some of our owners have lived in the building nearly 50 years. While our owners may have differences of opinions at times, we are all in agreement that this building should not be built. I would suggest to you that if the meeting were held in the evening, all the seats behind me would be filled with the owners, the residents. We are astounded and perplexed that the city planning department would recommend approval on multiple levels. This additional building does not in any way fit within any plan for structural residential growth within Etobicoke at this location. Traffic and safety. We currently have a serious problem with traffic at this location with the speed and volume of traffic. 3 years ago, I proposed at an annual general meeting a Cross Your Heart, Cross the Road campaign, where we invited councillors to join us in a game of dodgem as they attempt to cross the road in the morning to catch the bus. There have been numerous close calls over the years, including one of my neighbors, a personal friend, who spent the rest of her life in leg braces as a result of an accident in that area. Bus stops and signage have been obliterated, with the most recent the day after the pre-hearing at LPAT on May 7th, 2019. Coincidentally, the bus stop sign ended up beside the Starlight Project sign. The addition of traffic caused by the new building will only exacerbate this problem. Loss of daylight and associated expense. The construction of this building will tower over all in the area. The pictures we've seen have been from the helicopter view. None of the pictures show what it would look like face on. No sun in the early morning, no sun mid-morning, no sun in the afternoon or early evening for those facing north. Consider your own home. How would that affect you? This is not simply a light issue, it is a cost issue. The lack of sun will impact us by increasing our heating costs in the wintertime. The water table and potential flooding. We currently have a problem with flooding in the northwest corner due to a clay base in the area. Who will pay for the water runoff from Starlight on our property? Now, impact on community services. While this is an issue for the region to deal with, it is a concern as it will impact transportation, schooling, hydro, water pressure, and sewage. We believe these factors have not been given full scrutiny. One-time payment by Starlight. I see the proposal that Starlight will be handing over to the region $550,000. Would this project fly if the costs were not in this case? Can the merits of the proposal stand on its own merit? I suggest not. As I was walking in here, I saw a picture of Gordon Sinclair, and it reminded me of front page challenge days before your time, and I'd watch him ask the very tough questions. What's in it in terms of the money? And he would cut through that. He was quite an old curmudgeon, but he was a likable one. Market value. Our major concern is on the financial investment to our owners. Clearly, the construction of this building will reduce our property value and saleability during the construction and beyond. If we use a conservative figure of value reduction and additional costs, we could conceivably looking at $1 million impact on the total value to our owners at 551 the West Mall. Finally, I want to bring this down to a personal level. Let's talk about you councillors. If you lived in our building, would you support this high rise, loss of light, increased cost, reduced property value? Would you support it if this were to be built where you live now? If you support this proposal, you would be abrogating your responsibility to represent your electorate, the 1,000 owners and family members living next door, and as important, to see a planned residential growth for the region. Picture driving up the West Mall towards Rathburn in future. This monolith, this forced wedge in the corner should not be built. Thank you for your time. One final point, Mr. Holliday, 2 years ago you indicated you would not support this project. Owners who are with us today were at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yep. Councillor Holliday, question?
Yep. Thank you for speaking to me today, and I assume you've also been engaged with the developer. As they mentioned, there were some meetings.
At the only meeting I was at the LPAT meeting,
Okay.
May 6th.
So you brought up a few really important things. We hear them often in development, and I wanted to gauge some understanding of your position, I guess, representing the board. So I understand your position. You said you agree with Carol. Yes. You think City Council should reject any settlement?
That's right.
And, okay, so I got that, but I wanted to make sure I understood what your concerns were with traffic. So let's start with traffic. So that's that's the big one that comes up. Now, there would have been an engineering report, submitted in all this, and there were some conclusions that our first speaker reached about the level of parking, that it satisfied the concerns, and that the amount of traffic was acceptable on city streets. Do you have any advice for me on any analysis that you've done on that report? Do you agree with it? Do you reject it? Do you...
Well, there's two comments I have on that, and while I was listening to the first speaker, he talked about the reductions that have been made to accommodate. It reminds me of my partner who says, I saved 50% today, but what is not recognized is you're spending 50%. And the fact is that they may have made reductions, but the building is the problem. The reference that Councillor Peruzza mentioned in terms of parking, we're dealing with a parking problem right now, and we're dealing with because owners have two cars, not simply one car, not 0.9, not 0.8, but two cars, because they're going to various parts of the city. They're not taking the bus, although the bus does take up a number of the residents. We're looking at two cars. And as a result, we're looking at how can we expand on our own property additional parking when there's supposed to be a certain percentage of parking spaces for visitors. That's requiring us to look at how we can expand by paving a portion of our property.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. My councillor colleagues know I don't like it when anyone cheaps out on parking, because that creates a problem. Do you have the perception or concern that there's not enough parking here, or do they have enough? I need to. These are really important points right now.
Comment specifically about 555. Aside from the fact that there's 4 levels of parking.
Okay.
You talked about the timing in terms of the cars leaving the ramp, and the impact it's going to have in terms of moving on to the West Mall there.
So did you have any concerns with that?
Yes, absolutely.
And what was...
I'm concerned about the entire building.
And what... Okay. Were there any concerns or problems with what you read in the report on the traffic?
Specifically, the problem is more in general terms rather.
Okay, fair enough. I also wanted to make sure I understood any concerns you've got with light and shadow. So
Yeah.
there's a shadow study that, and I think there was a follow-up one done by the staff as contained in the report, and they said that there was very, very minimal shadow impacts. And I wondered if,
I don't believe that at all. I live on the north
Okay.
side, and I've looked at it many times from different apartments, and there's clearly an impact because the trajectory of the sun goes on an angle, and it immediately goes over top of the new building, and the people facing it on the north side will not see the sun at all.
so do you think they made an error in the sun shadow studies, or was something miscalculated? I mean, these again are really salient points that
It's
the LPAT
misleading.
would,
It's definitely misleading because, yes, there is sun at noon.
but how is it, I need to understand what the problem is.
The problem is the lack of light during the day.
So the studies
Yes,
don't say that there's a problem with the light,
but there is,
but how have you arrived at that conclusion?
by observation, by living there.
Okay,
And
so,
by the fact that I know what a 21-story building or
Okay.
22-story building
fair
looks
enough.
like.
And the last one, again, another thing that comes up often is the concern over capacity for engineering. Water, pressure, sewage, I think you brought up groundwater. I need to know if there's some concerns on that and what the basis is, because my expectation as a member of council, and all my colleagues are here, is that engineers there have checked the calculations that have been provided by the applicant, and my expectation is they don't get a building permit unless all of the systems are in place to make sure that this works. Do you have something for me to go on that would be able for me to dig into further on where the problems are?
The initial report indicated that there was to be a problem in terms of it, and then the numbers were revised. Now, how either the numbers were right the first time or they weren't right the first time, and why would they be revised upwards to a more acceptable level? The second part of it is that we do have a flooding problem even today in our area, and throughout the winter time, there is a great deal of snow that settles there and doesn't dissipate in the area on the northwest corner.
Okay, so besides those three, so the general engineering, the parking, and I'm gonna put parking and traffic together because it has to do with cars, and the third is the light and shadow.
Yes.
Was there any other major categories of concerns that you've got
Last question.
with the building?
I think that's it. That
Okay.
covers the major parts.
Thank you very much for speaking to me.
You're welcome.
And us.
Thank you. Any further question? Councillor Nunziata?
Yeah, just a question. Did you attend the community consultation meetings that were held in 2017?
I didn't at 2017, but there's a number of people in the room here who did.
Okay, and so you didn't attend, so you only attended the one meeting that you indicated, right?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So the building that you live in is a condo, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
So just a question, if this was a condo building, would you be supporting it?
If this was not a condo?
If this was a condo?
No.
No?
Because the impact it has on our building.
So, because you mentioned, about the rental, so I'm just curious.
No, it
if,
has nothing to do with
No?
absolutely not.
Okay.
It's the fact that it's a wedge within that particular location.
Yeah, no, it's just that you made that,
No, it has
when
nothing
you
to do
spoke.
with being rental or
Okay.
any form of, it's the building itself, that's the issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cheryl Hill. Good morning, Mrs. Hill. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Your Honors. My name is Cheryl Hill. I do live at 555 the West Mall with my spouse, Tom Vidler. I chose this penthouse apartment for its view and its privacy. I do face the north/west. A smaller sized apartment, only 900 square feet. During the summer, there are many fireworks, i.e. Centennial Park, Downsview, and Brampton. I see them all from my balcony. The proposed now I got to change it to 22-story building, will absolutely obstruct my view, as well as the other people in the new building will be able to see me and my husband naked. We chose this location for privacy. I lived here for 11 years, and trust me, it's been no picnic. Approximately 5 years ago, I was offered 3 months' rent to move out. Now I know why. They were already conspiring to put up another building, and 3 years ago, they made the application to the city. As you all should know, 555 the West Mall was the original building on West Mall. It was fields and a 2-lane road. All the other buildings came later. On May 6th, we were all invited to a pre-hearing conference at 655 Bay Street to review the refusal of the zoning application. I was out of the country for 7 weeks, so therefore I personally hired a legal representative at my expense. He did show up, and so did 555 the West Mall's legal counsel, as well as Carol Boland from 551 the West Mall, sorry, I should say. Apparently the next meeting is August 23rd at 10 a.m. I reached out to Steve Holliday's office prior to my leaving on my vacation. After talking to his aide, the response was that Steve couldn't express his thoughts on this travesty as a building and would not show up at this meeting on May 6th, which turns out was a waste of time and money for me and the other people that showed up. To make the points at hand, as I only have 5 minutes, parking. There is no legal parking on West Mall, and in order to assist our building, there has to be. To Steve Holiday, we live on a bend. I suggest making West Mall 5 lanes and at least 1 turning lane. Exits and entrance to my building, there will be only 1 to accommodate the 2 buildings. I changed those numbers again. So approximately 475 units. You may as well say 3 persons per unit, because you usually have a mother, a father, they each own cars. There's 2 cars, plus their children. So now you're adding approximately 1,000 people in my backyard, which brings us to the parking. The new owners are proposing 435 spots, short at least by 30 based on 1 car per family, which includes visitors and handicapped. This is not enough. The average cars per household is 2 cars in our building. Parking spots were and still are a problem already. They took 90% of our visitor spots and reallocated them to buildings, or to the building spots. That left us with 8 visitor spots and 1 handicap spot, which, for the record, I fought 9 years to get. They made it 1 car length wide and not the standard 1.5 car width for a handicapped person. I am handicapped, for the record. Insurance. First of all, this is going to go up, skyrocket, due to a higher density in the population for house and vehicles. Exhaust fumes, underground 4-story parking. I don't feel I should be forced to breathe this, as I'm asthmatic and I suffer from COPD. It's also not fair to 551 tenants as well. They own their condos, and I'm sure they didn't sign up for this problem. Crime. This neighborhood has lots of it. We've had stabbings, shootings, and drive-by shootings. I've had my locker broken into as well. The 6 lockers beside me were also ripped off. I lost $5,000 minimum in TV, stereos, satellite equipments. We had a crackhead living and sleeping in the locker room for 2 years. This all goes to lack of security on our property. Vehicles are being broken into, and we also had parts stolen from our truck. It took me 10 years to get a proper lock just to put on our storage lockers in the underground. What I'm trying to say is that adding 600 minimum to 1,000 people in our backyard building stands to reason that crime will go up. Now also, regarding Holiday Drive, they were denied their application for a high-rise, so they put in the townhouses. If this application goes through, it will open up a whole new can of worms for future high-rises. Just say no.
Ms. Hill, you're out of time. Thank you.
No, I got 1 more page.
Ms. Hill, you're over 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
But I got most important parts to come.
I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Okay, just say no. Okay, interruption of water and electricity. This is a great problem. Therefore, I've lived through 5 years of constant construction within my building. This is purely for their upgrades only. They're converting two-bedroom apartments to three-bedroom apartments. Garage flooding. This already happens after a huge rain. There already is not enough grates for water runoff as well as in the back of our parking lot. Quality of life. Let's just be polite and say that nobody will have it. The noise, the dust.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. You're out of time. Thank you.
Somebody else want to finish reading this for me?
Questions?
Anybody else want to finish reading?
Questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Hill. Thank you. Our next speaker, Dr. Gerald McHugh. Good morning, sir. Welcome. You have 5
Morning,
minutes.
thank you. Quite a number of points which I would like to make have been made already in previous meetings and this morning, and I endorse them all. According to my knowledge, the provincial planning protocol requires that studies, surveys be done before construction, before development, with particular reference to health, schools, education, and I'm concerned about the level of pollution in the area. I have been told that we live on the West Mall in one of the highest levels of pollution in the city. And it makes sense that we do, because we are wedged between the airport, the 427, and the West Mall itself is a mini highway. I'm wondering if studies have been made regarding these subjects. Am I permitted to ask the question for an answer?
No, I'm sorry you're not.
Okay,
We can ask you questions, but
right.
Our
I'll
process
leave the
goes-
question with you.
you might get that question from your counsel.
Okay. If surveys have been done, if it's possible, I would like a copy of the report. I endorse fully the presentation made previously this morning by the trustee. The proposed development will be within walking distance of Michael Power. So the whole area of education is a big question in reference to this development. Just a personal note before I finish. I live on the southwest corner of the building 551. And I dread the prospect of living for at least 1 year, if not 2, listening to construction noise. I know that has no bearing, very much a personal opinion, on the development, but I would like to say it, and I would like to say that it has merit when we speak about the quality of living at 551 the West Mall. And I know other people feel the same way in reference to enduring construction so close to my home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McHugh. You have a question? Councillor Perruzza, question?
Yeah, are you familiar with the provincial government's new Bill 108, Doug Ford's Bill 108?
I just heard it, read it in reference in the media only.
Do you know that it just rips the roof off density? Builders now can just simply go as high as they want. Talk about the war on the car. He just unleashed a tsunami on the car, right? Reduce standards, all of it.
Yes.
And are you familiar that Bill 108 reduces even the appeal period for developers from 120 days to 90 days, meaning essentially no time to look at anything, forget studies. No time to even read the initial report.
Can we stick to the issue, please?
I'm asking him if he's familiar with Bill 108.
We've got to stick to the issue. It's not before us. Bill 108's not before us.
Well, it is. It's before all the people in Ontario, by the way.
No, it's not. We're talking about the issue here in front of us, please.
Okay, all right. I'll back off.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Just remember that one, though. Bill 108, look it up.
Councillor Holliday to speak.
Thank you for speaking to us, Dr. McHugh. If I understand, you're in 551, the West Mall?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I understand the proximity. You raised some important things. I know I've talked about them before. It's just about air pollution in general along the 427 corridor. I think it would be helpful for you to help me understand, is this a general view on development that you've got in the city, or is this more specific to the site? So you brought up very prevalent issues that we cope with on developments all along and all over Etobicoke. So there is air pollution caused by automobiles, which is really linked to additional people, right? It's just more people living there, so more cars. And then, of course, the capacity of the schools. So as more people come into this district of the city, you know, our infrastructure is struggling to keep up. So really the schools are a litmus for the larger discussion, right? Over, you know, pipes and sewers, road capacity, parks, recreation, fire services, police services. So is your view sort of a general one of concern over intensification in the city, or is it one that is far more precise on this site?
I have the general view regarding pollution.
Okay.
And education as well. But in particular, I am concerned about the level of pollution in the West Mall area.
Okay.
Because the airport is a big, big polluter.
Okay. What
And
leads
by
you...
adding another couple of hundred cars to the area, just adds to the pollution.
Unpack that a little bit, if you please. Just on the airport, what is the concern over the airport and its pollution?
Well, the emission from planes is...
So have you seen any of the studies from the airport?
I have spoken to people who are involved in the issue of pollution in the city.
Would you be surprised, well, first of all, I'll say that I had worked with the airport for a period of time. It was one of my duties as a councillor, and that position rotates around. Would you be surprised that if you saw the environmental report from the airport that took a strata of, I think, 5,000 feet, the airport said, look, planes over 5,000 feet are not ours. They belong to the skies and is a larger global issue, but anything below that ceiling of 5,000 feet, if you add in all the fuel emissions from that and all of the fuel emissions from all of the work in and around the airport on the ground with the service vehicles and the cars and everything there, and you totaled up the emissions from that, and then you compared it to if the airport wasn't there and you just extrapolated all the factories and the growth of the area into that large landmass, the net pollution is actually less. Would you be surprised at that? I know I was shocked.
I am surprised, and according to my knowledge and the knowledge of people I consult occasionally, I think it's worthy of an argument.
Yeah, it's out there.
Or a debate, maybe.
You know, I hope you'll put in the form of the question, if you'd ever be interested in downloading that from the airport, I would love your take on that, because that's the thing that I learned. It was quite something and quite profound because of the land mass in the area of the airport, that if it wasn't there, we might actually be worse off. And I think there are things out there. I can't think of where to look at them right now, but it does talk about the impacts of the highway, and I think point is well taken on the level of pollution, and I know the developers in the room, I hope they will think about putting adequate air handling systems into the building to deal with localized pollution coming from the 427 corridor. It's massive. And you know, if they can get fresh air into the residents and to have a better quality product for people that are living there, I think you've raised a valuable point, and I thank you for that. And then just in general, in terms of development, I'm going to make it my last question, Mr. Chair.
45 seconds, Councillor.
We do deal with these matters at the LPAD or the OMB, as this one is. Do you have any advice for the council or the solicitors that may be listening if we did push back on growth and the general concept of growth in the city as prescribed by the growth plan? You know, how would we push back in general on those issues of not enough schools, not enough infrastructure? Do you think we could have a successful argument at them or against them to say push back on development because the infrastructure isn't keeping up?
It's such a vast issue, and we know that it's going to be one of the biggest issues in the present and future elections. And I'm not knowledgeable enough to make any recommendation, but I think it should be a priority concern of all governments at all levels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next speaker, Elizabeth Durante. Elizabeth? Durante? No. No, for Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you pull that mic down a little bit?
Okay, could you hear me okay? Okay, great. My name's Elizabeth Duarte, and I'm a resident at 551 the West Mall. And I'm here actually to defend the rights of the residents in this community. What are our rights? Well, I believe number one, the right to a comfortable, peaceful, and relaxing home. Number two, the right to privacy. Number three, the right to green spaces, sunshine that contribute to our well-being. The current building at 555 the West Mall, I believe, is already too close to home for there to be much privacy, and we would love to have more personal space. There's a very dangerous curve right in front of 551 and 555 the West Mall. Throughout the years, I've seen several automobile and motorcycle accidents there. By going forth with the project, you'll be bringing in more people and therefore increasing traffic. There's a bus stop right across both of these buildings, so it's just a question of time before someone is run over or even killed. The developers and planners are increasing the chances of this happening by allowing this monstrosity to be built. We do not want to live in a concrete jungle in the suburbs. We enjoy our air quality and green spaces. We don't need the added stress of more congestion. What the current residents of the 555 the West Mall are in need of is actually a green space area of their own, so they won't have the need to come to our property and use our playgrounds, etc. And it's the developer's responsibility to provide this for them to improve their quality of life. There is safety concern for me because we already have our share of crime and gang violence in the area. We need to deal with controlling this and not bringing in more people who may fall victims to this as well. In terms of the economy, there's no economic benefit to the creation of this project. Only a bigger profit for the already greedy builders who already have many other projects in this area and properties. I would like to think that they are intelligent people, but coming up with such an outrageous plan as this to build a 22-story building in the backyard of a current building is simply insane and not appropriate for our community.
Any questions? See none, thank you very much. Our next speaker, Melvin Plizzle. Melvin? Good morning, sir. Welcome. You have 5 minutes. Just pull that mic up just a little bit, sir. There we go. Thank you.
You're going to lose it. My name is Mel Clissold. I'm a retired professional firefighter from Etobicoke. I have been to many fires involved in apartment buildings, and I know what happens when we pull in. We might have 3 or 4 trucks at an apartment building, and by the time the hoses are laid and we start working, the lot is pretty well covered. The entrance into 555 is now small. By the time we get trucks there and loaded and working, there won't be room for warming trucks to come in to handle evacuators from the building, or ambulances, or anything else to come in if we need heavy equipment. This building would not be an asset to any fire department. The floors that are going to go in the building itself is in the wrong place. Please reject this application for the building. Thank
sir.
you.
Joseph Mentella, our next speaker, Joseph Mentella. Good morning, Mr. Mentella. Good afternoon, almost. You have 5 minutes, my friend.
I'd just like to, my name is Mantella from 551 the West Mall. My name is Mantella from 551 the West Mall. I'd just like to say one thing. I checked on quite a few of the buildings on the West Mall, and also on Holiday Drive. And Holiday Drive there, they're going to open up the places there, the townhouses, and once they open them up and they put up the building, that's going to be too much. So please don't put that up.
Questions? Thank you. Our next speaker is Victoria Brashenko. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning for everybody. My name is Victoria Fatushenko. I'm an owner apartment 1009, 15 years. I share this apartment with my husband and son. And thank you for listening my personal story. 5 years ago, it's happened disaster in our family. My husband got asthma. And asthma, he was unemployed 2 years. And it was terrible situation. We need every day special part for my husband and $60 per week for breathing special medication. Now he's okay. He's fine. He's found a new job. But in our building, a lot of people who has asthma component. I'm just talking about ecological situation in this area. It's not just easy understand when you just see this tragedy. It's not easy because what is this? If you just bring for us opportunity, look on new building construction and breathing, it should be new bad situation for, it's not healthy situation for people in our building, believe me. If you need calculate how many people has asthma component, we can do it. Only one, but you remember 2 years ago, we calculate how many people just coming and told about this.
Okay, you have to speak to the chair, please. Thank
Yes, sorry about this. And what our community give special for healthy ecological situation. I mean, Grange, 551. We have new 15 trees around our building. Who do it? This guy who building new, who started building its new project. 15 trees. This is something good. Something good. But still, if we breathe with new building construction, sorry, I don't know what we can do with our husband. Maybe we sold our apartment, but nobody buy. Our neighbor just on the floor 9. I'm on the top floor 10. On the right side, I cannot see Centennial Park. Just luck view, nothing. We can breathe building construction. We can breathe new 300 new cars, 300 cars. I don't know. I very appreciate it if you cancel this project, because this project not healthy for people. Believe me, not healthy. And we talk about cars, everything, but 300 cars, how we can breathe with new 300 cars? We talk about ecological situation. Come on, we put 15 trees around all the building. We'll do something. What people doing for us? They bring for us new sicknesses. Sorry about this, but this is my personal experience, bad experience. And I very appreciate it if you just cancel this project, please. If you won't just calculate how many people has asthma component, we'll do it. But believe me, I have personal experience, bad experience about this, yeah. By the way, my husband not smoker. Just something, doctor says something happened in situation. He cannot breathing with dust. I clean every day, 2 times in summertime of my apartment, wet cleaning. That's it. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for, this is my personal story.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Our next speaker, Pavel Shadin. Pavel Shadzin? Pavel here? No? Okay. Dr. Jania Kuzmas? Dr. Jania Kuzmas? No. Any further speakers to the item? Can I take this 3 minutes? No, I'm sorry you can't. Our rules don't allow it, but any further speakers before bringing to committee? Seeing none, questions of staff. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask first planning and then transportation. So I'll, well, if we have the, perfect, hi.
Hi.
So one of the overall discussion is just about the general concern over growth in the city. And I wondered if you could offer some comment on what the provincial growth plan, what our city's official plan, and what is the legal context and the planning context that all of this is in?
Right. Hi, through the chair. So in terms of our provincial policy statement and our growth plan, it establishes policies that look to intensification within existing established settlement areas and a focus on compact, complete communities, and that the important mechanism for establishing where this growth shall be is through the Toronto official plan. And our official plan policies for this particular site, it's designated apartment neighborhood. So it is within an apartment neighborhood, and there's certain apartment neighborhood development criteria that we look at and assess the site in terms of development criteria, as well as infill development, such as this proposal. And there's a whole slew of infill development criteria that we look at when assessing this site.
So the official plan is the council's document, the city's document, the official set of rules on how this works.
Correct.
And from your analysis in your report, this proposal, pardon me, is consistent with what the official plan says.
Correct.
Now, the other piece to this is that, excuse me, the other piece is that this is an infill development, and I wondered if you could comment on how this works with the rules around infill development and whether everything has been satisfied or not.
Right, so first and foremost, through the chair. So we we look at the site being, it's an existing site containing a rental building on the site. And we first looked at the designation, which is apartments designation. So we look at all the development criteria for apartment neighborhoods. Then we look at the second set of policies which relate to infill development that speaks to compatibility for the site and the different criteria for developing infill on the site in terms of massing, transition, height, density, light, shadow, parking impacts for the site, as well as improvements to the existing building on the site and improving of quality of life
and amenities for the existing residents.
So you go through a set of rules that are consistent for all developers and all people with proposals. I was very concerned, actually, that it was brought up, there was not a confidence in the sun and shadow study. What was your finding as a professional planner? This is something that you're looking for on the checklist to make sure that it's been dealt with. What was your finding in this case?
So staff looked at the applicant's submitted sun and shadow study, as well as conducting our own shadow and sun study. And when we looked at the results, it showed that the shadows moved quickly throughout the site. The applicant did make some changes to their proposal, which did reduce the impacts, such as a slimmer floor plate down to 750 meters square, as well as increasing separation distance to 26 meters between the existing buildings on the site. And looking at the shadows for the different seasons, it was found that there was only slight shadow between 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the adjacent edge of the property to 551 the West Mall, as well as the actual building itself at 551 the West Mall shadows the existing subject site at 555 the West Mall during various hours through all the morning hours.
So if I got this right, the shadow from the new building, according to the study, the engineering study, it only casts a very short shadow at some parts of the year on the edge of the site at 551. So not on the building, but on the edge of the property. But conversely, the 555 building, sorry, the 551 building puts larger shadows the other way.
Correct.
For most of the year. Okay, so that's what your findings were. And I'll just ask you a general question. From your perspective as the planner that goes through all of this detail, are there any loose threads or things that are of concern with respect to all of the standards and plans and requirements that we have as a city that are out there, right? Those are the published rules. Is there any loose threads on this that need to be resolved?
No, so in looking at this project holistically and all the divisions that were circulated, all the divisional comments, technical comments that we have, there are no loose threads.
It didn't start that way, but it was changed throughout.
Right, correct.
Yes, for a second round. Thank you.
Any other questions? So, I have a couple quick questions. We heard from a retired firefighter. Does Fire not review this application, and are they okay with it? Was there any concerns from Toronto Fire?
Yeah, so every application is circulated to Development Engineering Construction Services, who forwards it to Fire Services, and Fire Services has reviewed the application. In terms of the rezoning application, there has been no outstanding conditions pertaining to fire in the rezoning application.
So Toronto Fire is satisfied?
Correct.
Okay. And we heard about water and sewage, there's enough water capacity. I know Technical Services reviews that, so explain how that happens. Our departments review this to make sure there's enough water to flush the toilets, enough sewer capacity. That's all been satisfied by our technical engineers?
Correct. There was no outstanding issues pertaining to groundwater, servicing, sanitary for the site.
Okay, and I think you answered this question, so this fits within our official plan?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Councillor Holiday's asked for a second round. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. I wonder if I could ask questions of transportation. Luigi, your job is to look at all of the submissions as it pertains to development with the eye of the transportation department. So you're worried about the road capacity, you're worried about parking. What was your findings upon your review of this development application? Do they have enough parking, and were they going to create a traffic problem on the West Mall?
Through the chair, in terms of parking, as was mentioned by their planning consultant, Mr. Volpentesta, we applied the new bylaw, the new citywide harmonized bylaw to this site in terms of parking, and it required a total of 435 parking spaces, and they're satisfying that requirement. We're comfortable with that. In terms of traffic impacts, the proposal was subject to the submission of a traffic impact study, as any other proposal would be. And in terms of generating trips, what the consultant did is they estimated the new trips that will be generated by the development based on a survey of the existing residential units that are on the property right now. They derived trip generation rates on a per unit basis and then applied those rates to the new development or the new units. Given the proposed 256 residential units for the development, that The site will generate approximately 120 vehicles per minute, per hour, sorry, during the AM and PM peak hour. That's new trips. They're over and above the additional, the trips that are there right now. So we're talking about, in terms of new trips, we're talking approximately two vehicles a minute.
2 vehicles a minute. Okay, thank you very much. I just, from a legal perspective, there's a bit of confusion about whether or not council is deciding to approve this application today, and I wondered if we could just confirm this particular item has been appealed to the LPAT, and so therefore the decision on whether this goes ahead or doesn't go ahead is with the LPAT. But as a council, we need to take a position as to whether or not we support what the settlement is, or we will go possibly and oppose the settlement. But given legal's experience in these matters, would it be possible that the applicant or the building owner would use all of the evidence derived from our staff that shows that from a planning perspective they have no objections, from a technical perspective they have no objections? And what is the possible outcome given the rules of the LPAT? Could the applicant argue something completely different?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on the first part of the question, whether the approval authority is vested with the city or the LPAT, I can confirm that because this matter was appealed, the approval authority is the provincial tribunal, and so it no longer rests with the city. What the report is asking is that City Council provide instructions to legal staff and technical staff to either go in support or oppose the proposal that's before it. With respect to staff's position, it is on the record. With respect to the proposal that is before you today, staff have indicated their support subject to a number of conditions which are outlined in the recommendations. It is always open to an applicant to potentially subpoena staff members to provide their professional opinion at the tribunal hearing if in the event the city decides to or receives instructions to oppose, staff would still be in support. And with respect to the third part of the question regarding the an applicant's ability to call a case or the potential of an applicant vigorously opposing instructions to oppose at the tribunal, it's very frequent that we do see applicants look at the position of staff on the record when either promoting their position at the LPAT. So unless there's anything that I missed, I think those address the points made, Councillor.
And sorry, the last piece was there any risk that this thing could change into something else at the LPAT because of the rules there and our inability to control what goes before the tribunal and their decision making? This could change from what's on the page.
That's correct, Councillor. The rules at the tribunal do allow amended applications to come before it. Although the proposal that is before you today is on the record, that's why it's part of a public report. Should this be opposed, there is the potential that an applicant could make further amendments to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Councillor Holiday to speak.
Thank you for everyone that came to speak today. I will ask the clerk, I have 2 minor amendments, and I will explain what those are to the comprehensive amendments in the application, and I'm also going to move the staff recommendations. I will say this, this has been a very difficult file to grapple with within the community. I understand and appreciate people's opposition. That opposition has been a spectrum throughout this. I remember the community meeting in this chamber, and it was quite galvanic. There were some people that were not really fussed about it, but I would say there were a lot of people that didn't want to see the building built, and there was also a segment of people that just didn't want to see any development anywhere at all. And that's a really tough thing to contend with as a councillor, because we know the city is changing. There's people coming here. There's changes out in the community. We see it all over the place. And so we began a process, and I do this all the time with communities. We try to understand and unpack exactly what it is that is being proposed. We try to work on it to see if we can reduce it in size. We can make amendments to the configuration and the way that things work and operate in and around the site. And that went through as a process. There were some meetings held with the condominium association, the developer, with various residents, and they tailored this thing as best as they could. I guess we come to the final point today. And, you know, what we've got before us, as our lawyer has told us, is that, you know, we don't have your run-of-the-mill decision right in front of community council here, yes or no, send it away. We have something that's been appealed to the LPAT, or what used to be known as the Ontario Municipal Board. So that decision actually rests with a body of the Ontario government. And this council's been handed something before it that says, you know, the applicant's shrunk its building down and it's changed things around a little bit. And what our planners have told us and what our technical representatives have told us is that it meets all of the requirements of the city's official plan. It meets all of the legal check boxes that would be tested at such a hearing. And so we can either accept the offer and get what we get, or we can roll the dice and go there and fight this further at the LPAT. I guess one of the risks with that is within the rules of the LPAT, and it happens from time to time, is that if we don't take what's been proposed to us, it can get changed. It could go back to 24, 26 stories. There's always that risk. And so I've been given a very, very practical challenge as a councillor is do you try to take the best deal that you can for the community, which is what's contained in this report, or do you want to gamble with it and try to have the thing refused? And all of the best advice that I've got from professionals on this file say, you know, you can't just refuse the thing and make it go away. It's not realistic. There's an argument to be made within the planning circles and based on advice that would go before the tribunal, including our own people within the City of Toronto that would say, you know, this thing meets substantially all their requirements, and so it's you know, it's legal. It would probably get approved. I've added two very small motions to the recommendations. The first is, and they're not new, I've used them before. The first is I want to see a very, very clear construction management plan come from the applicant and a communication plan for the tenants. We are working in a fairly confined area here around and close to other buildings. I think, and I don't think this is a difficult thing to do, and I would imagine any good developer would do this anyways. But I really want to understand how the parking works, how the construction plan works, and I want to have a conversation with the community that if it comes time to build, that we find a way to make this operate as best as possible. And the second one is really important. The second one says, we have this rule that says we can have on-street parking in the City of Toronto. This rule takes the ability for 555 the West Mall to ever ask for on-street parking. And I put this here because I want the developer to be really clear. You better put enough parking in your building. You're going to rent the units. You better have enough parking to satisfy the needs of those rental tenants, or you won't be renting the units. And don't come to me as the city and say, you know, city, bail me out and put on some on-street parking. I think that would change the look of the West Mall. It would change the look of the neighborhood and would make us feel urban. So that's been put in there as a stopgap measure to try and encourage and to make sure that enough parking. And finally, the risk goes to the developer. So I don't have to sit here and think, you know, do we get enough parking? It's up to them. Or they won't be renting units because they won't have enough parking spots. I've done my best here to try to satisfy some of the concerns that came along their way with the community. But I am in that position that I have to recommend to my colleagues of council to accept the staff recommendations because the risk that may occur at the LPAT on gambling on this may not be the wisest course of action. We're going to do our best to get something here that works within the community. Thank everybody for their time on this.
Thank you, Councillor Holliday. Any further speakers to the item? Seeing none, Councillor Holliday's amendments on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. A couple of housekeeping items. We added 736, a request from Councillor Pruitt. Is that to remove speed humps or not put them in? Just very quickly, and then we got one from Councillor Holliday. So a motion to put them on the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I think we can deal with Councillor Pruitt's. All in favor?
So hang on.
It's to take out something.
That one's take it out?
Yeah. All in favor?
This doesn't take them out.
Okay, then we're gonna hold this thing down. So
No,
what do you
all
do?
in favor? Yeah, happy?
Okay, just quickly, 30 seconds.
Just to explain it, they haven't been installed. There was no pole, there was no real process for them. So what this asks for is to basically not put them in.
Not to put them, okay. Okay, all in favor?
I'm
Opposed?
not a fan of.
Carried. And Councillor Holiday's motions, request transfer to consider, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Those are dealt with.
I have another matter, Mr. Chair. It's really, really
Councillor
quick.
Pruitt, just-
And my question of staff was, because I was reading the
Councillor Pruitt,
recommend.
hold on, what do you, hold on.
Yeah. I'm jumping.
Isn't there another
I
item
get
that
it. I
Councillor
get
Pruitt
jumpy.
held?
All right.
28?
Yeah,
So
28.
Councillor Pruitt, you held number 28, which is parking regulation amendment, Isaac Devon's Boulevard. I want to
Correct.
clear all this stuff off so we can go into camera, the last time in
Perfect.
camera.
I just wanted to ask staff if that's in line with the meeting we had with the residents, and that's consistent with the plan that was presented to them.
Yeah, through the chair, there was a public meeting on this, and this is the recommendation that was presented
Okay,
at
perfect.
that time.
I'm happy to move that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Pruitt, move the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Do I get that? Is it your mom? Okay, Rosemary, is it just,
I've got one.
hold on. Hold on. 25. Councillor Holiday on 25, reopening of the public laneway between Acme Crescent, 1735 Kipling Avenue, item number 7.25. Councillor Holiday?
So no questions of staff. I'm just happy to speak and explain the motion that I'm going to move
Okay.
to my colleagues here. If I could ask the clerks to display the motion, unless somebody has questions on this.
Almost done.
You just did it.
Got that, okay. Thanks. So during the last council term, a motion was moved by one of the members of the community council to close a pedestrian laneway. Pedestrian laneway runs from the Westway Plaza, which is the corner of Dixon and Kipling, through the back of the plaza and to Acme Crescent. And it's not a unique laneway. If you can picture the ones that we see all over the Etobicoke neighborhoods, it's a narrow pathway from one section to the other, and it allows pedestrians to shortcut going around the block. And there was some concerns, I guess, that had come forward from that particular councillor at the time, and they closed it as a test, and it was never really dealt with. So what I discovered was a fenced-off little walking laneway filled with weeds, garbage, debris, and basically uncared for. I heard a story that somebody was interested in buying it at one point and never got sold, and it's just sitting there not doing anything. Fast forward to 2019, I got a call from a couple of residents that live near there, and they said, you know, look, I'm disabled. My family member is disabled. We really want to be able to get to the plaza. Councillor, can you just deal with this lane and figure out what's going on? We think it should be open. It's been like that since the subdivision was built. What are we going to do about it? So I posted a sign on the laneway a few weeks ago. I got some calls from people. I got some calls from people in the area that complained about crime in the area and the condition of the laneway. Those resonated with me. But I also got calls from people that wanted it opened. And I got contacted and spoke to business owners at the plaza that said, you know, this is taking away from people coming to our plaza. So I'm stuck there balancing it out. At the end of the day, I believe the right thing to do is bring this lane back to the way that it had always been intended in the neighborhood. I take note and respect that there may be some concerns with overgrowth in the laneway, the condition of the laneway, and this responds to a lot of the feedback that was provided to me by people in the area. And so I'm asking Transportation Services really to get in there and clean it up and bring it to a good state of repair in the motion. I'm asking our bylaw enforcement folks to try to deal with some of the litter in the area. And it's coming from various sources, so we're not going to direct them to do any enforcement, but I asked them to go around and take a look because that speaks to residents' concerns. And finally, we refer this over to the police to keep an eye on the laneway to make sure that they're keeping an eye out for some of the antisocial activities that were raised by others. I would just say that I wish this had been dealt with in previous cycles or previous council, but it was one of those things that was left to be resolved, and here we are. We've got to make a decision on the point because I can't have a little fenced-in area that's growing with weeds and filling with garbage because it will actually make the situation worse. I hope my colleagues will support the reopening of really a pedestrian walkway, and that we can make some effort to try to get it cleaned up and improved, so that people in the area will once again be happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holliday. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll go to number 34. Request to resign traffic island in Evans Avenue on the East Mall. This is a request from me to staff and public realm. We put these beautiful islands on Evans Avenue. We reconstructed the road, and what we've done in there, besides the trees, we planted grass in there. Now, we only cut the grass 5 times a year. This grass is up 2 feet high. If you go by there, it's right in front of Sherway Gardens. You know, urban design puts this in. I don't know if that was intended to be grass, but I'm on staff all the time to cut 2-foot-high grass, sometimes it's taller than that. And I'm asking staff to have a look at that, but in the interim, I'm talking to staff, hope to maybe adjust this motion because there's budget concerns that this may implication. So anyway, I'm going to move this, and hopefully I work some wording with staff and get that done before council. So it's right here at number 34. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Nunziata, you held number 7.35, encroachment appeal, 70 Haverson Boulevard.
Yeah, staff had the motion. Just put it on the screen. It has been reviewed with city staff and that, and they're okay with it. So I'll just move it.
Let's get on the screen, hang on.
Okay,
I can see the motion.
on the screen.
Could you just maybe explain what we're doing here, Councillor? Okay, can you, Francis, give us a little quick what we're doing?
It's, I don't have the motion. Here. Okay, this is in my new area. It's just actually to legalize an encroachment that's been there, and this is in the new area that I represent now. So the applicant has appealed. So we come up with this recommendation with city staff that they're fine with it, and then Etobicoke York Community Council authorized the general manager to negotiate into an encroachment agreement with 70 Haverson.
Great. Got it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So last item is is number 33, correct? Okay, number 33, we have a speaker. Martin. No, we're not yet. The plan is going camera. We're going to hear from the speakers first, and then we're going to go on camera. So, speaker, Martin Pizev?
How about 37? Have we dealt with 37?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Thank you for your patience today, sir. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Martin Peshev. I'm a small business owner, northern Etobicoke. I was sitting on a board, business improving area. I'll be on Islington Square the last mandate. This is my second mandate. I'm a very strong person. I want to be board very transparent, and why I'm here. I'm a corruption fighter. I don't support the corruptions. And I'm asking this council to keep me still on a board because I'm working hard.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Archana Bardwaj. Did I get that right? Thank you. Good morning. Welcome, or good afternoon. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors. And just wanted to make a quick note before I start. Our chairman was here at 9:30. He actually had to leave at 10:45 to open his store, and he wanted to present to council, but unfortunately he wasn't. So, dear respected councillors, on Thursday, May 30th at Albion Islington Square BIA board meeting, a motion was approved by the Board of Management to recommend the General Manager of Economic Development and Etobicoke York Community Council to remove Martin Pazev from the Board of Management of Albion Islington Square BIA. The board has arrived at this decision after a year and a half of dealing with inappropriate behavior with inappropriate behavior of Martin Pazev. Some examples of this behavior include disruptive and outburst at the April 28th board meeting, including yelling at City of Toronto staff, so our economic advisor, in front of guests, board members, new BIA staff, and former councillors' staff. The behavior has continued. There was a disruptive and outburst at the September 28th board meeting, including inappropriate comments to a fellow board member and treasurer, Prakash, and former contract staff, Mira Khan. After the treasurer brought a motion that said that Martin should not be doing printing for the festival as a board member, and further charging more than 3 times the amount for printing posters and postcards for the festival. Comments to Prakash include, "You're racist, you don't like me because I'm not Indian, you don't want me to tell you what your wife said about you at the holiday dinner." Staff Mira reminded Martin that the meeting was in a restaurant and to act accordingly. Martin became aggressive towards staff and made disrespectful comments such as, "You're staff, not a board member, stop talking, you're lying." Staff advised the board that Martin had made inappropriate comments to her at his store. On September 24th, 2018, our former contract staff had made a complaint to the City of Toronto BIA office regarding Martin's behavior. Our chairman, Shamsher Singh, spoke to Martin regarding this inappropriate behavior with former contract staff and requested that Martin resign. Martin refused. I came back from maternity leave in November 2018. The pattern of inappropriate behavior has carried into the new term, including being disruptive, disrespectful, and out of order at our first meeting on January 16, 2019. On January 16th, we weren't able to get through our agenda, and this has become a pattern of behavior. So all of our board meetings, we aren't able to get through any of the agenda items. There is now at least 1 incident per month since the beginning of the new term. Martin is now disrespectful to me, making it difficult for me to do my job. This includes hijacking meetings that I have with community partners, making comments about the board and the festival that are untrue, advising me not to attend meetings that I've been invited to, sending inappropriate emails to board members. Our chairman has tried to speak with Martin regarding his behavior on multiple occasions. Other board members have tried to speak with him. I've tried to speak with him. The former councillor has tried to speak with him. In April, our BIA did a presentation on duties and responsibilities, just to remind all board members of their responsibilities. But the behavior has continued. Our BIA has issued a letter to Martin outlining the behavior and advising him to cease the behavior. Unfortunately, the behavior has continued. Our board is no longer...
Please, you're out of time. You can wrap up.
Oh, okay. Our board is no longer able to function as a cohesive unit, and we are not able to be productive as Martin's behavior dominates the meetings. Other board members are no longer wishing to attend the meetings because the meetings have become unproductive.
Okay, thank you. Out of time. Thank you. Questions? Questions, Councillor Ford?
Thank you very much, Archana, for attending. So, of course, I am aware of some of the issues that have transpired on a number of different sides of the equation, which we know. Has there, so in terms of the outbursts and whatnot, and I will ask our staff one of the questions about the conduct in the meeting when we get to staff questions, but has there been any working with Martin to address some of the concerns of the board?
Are you speaking about staff, like BIA staff, or the
BIA
chairman?
board members to address some of the concerns they have?
With Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah, and our chairman has spoken to him on 2 separate occasions. The last time he took a third board member, because he thought it would maybe help to hear it from another board member who's neutral. I've spoken to him. I know, city staff has spoken to him and addressed these concerns, but the behavior has progressively gotten worse. And, like we aren't able to function as a board. And, all of our board members are volunteering their time, and are contributing positively. And I think we've given him numerous chances. The last presentation that we did, that was directed by the chairman, was to remind them of the duties and responsibilities and to address this stuff. And, we've also reached out to the Integrity Commissioner and seeked her informal advice. Like, we have no other option aside from this option.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we have a motion to go in camera?
Yes.
Motion to go in camera by Councillor Ford.
I have it somewhere. Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that Etobicoke Community Council recess its public session to meet in closed session to consider the following item, EY 7.33, appointments to business improvement areas, boards of management, reason for confidential information, personal matters about identifiable individuals.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. Can I ask anybody not involved in this item, please clear the room. Thank you. I need a motion to extend to finish the item. Moved by Councillor Ford. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so Etobicoke York Community Council has completed its closed session considering the confidential information related to the following item. EY 7.33, appointment to business improvement area boards of management. No motions were made in closed session. We will now proceed with the public debate in these items. Are there any further items or further speakers to this item? Seeing none, Councillor Ford.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will move recommendations as outlined in the report with a very kind of minimal context here. The challenge here is that I think we have two sides to this issue, and the matter of kind of the corruption claims and whatnot that's happened at the board, I think is very serious, and I think has to be looked into. I asked for the committee to go in closed session to have more of a little deeper dive on conversations around, you know, how we address that, make sure that's addressed, but also on the flip side of this, to address the conduct that has been brought forward to our community council in terms of why someone is being removed off the board, which I think also is very important that the board can do and carry out in their meetings as they should be able to. So that, in a nutshell, is why I'm moving the recommendations that have been brought forward by the BIA. But I have been assured by staff that any allegations of corruption or anything like that will be looked into, and I think it should be and will be taken heavily. So that's it. Thank you.
Any further speakers? I'll just speak very quickly. I'll be supporting Councillor Ford. Number one, most people on these BIs are, probably all of them are volunteers. It's important these meetings do get off, they get to complete their agendas, and it's just not for one person to disrupt a meeting. And I said, you know, people have better things to do with their time and go home and lie on the couch and then come out and help their community and make their neighborhood a better place. So with that, I'll be supporting Councillor Ford. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Good. Okay, just got rid of my cheat sheet. What do I do with it? Huh? I know I did, but I can't find it. That's not the one. That's this morning. I got it here somewhere. There we go. Councillor Holiday, you have a motion to introduce and act certain bills.
I do. Thank you, Chair, that the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 985 to 991 and 1065 prepared for the June 25th, 2019 meeting 7 of the Community Council.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaws? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Ford, you have a motion to introduce and act the confirming bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 7 on June 25th, 2019.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion adjourned. Angela Brown?
Yes, happy Canada Day to everyone.
Angela, motion to adjourn? Angela?